Li Jian stands there, chest heaving, blood trickling down his cheek. He's out of breath and looking rough. Why is he always in these messes? But right now, he's just catching his breath, clearing his mind. Suddenly, he sees a comforting smile. Is this a memory, maybe? Someone who once meant the world to him. Hey, Li Jian! A woman's voice calls out. He's in a cafe, across from her. You shouldn't space out when someone is in front of you, she says with a grin. He snaps back to the present. Tanks line up, rumbling ominously. Soldiers, jittery and on edge, appear ready for something big. Li Jian's all by himself, against this massive force. Around him, bodies lie scattered. His mind races. I'm sorry, he mutters, facing the inevitable. The command is loud and clear. Fire! Chaos erupts. Explosions echo, fire blooms in the sky. But Jian, he's got power and starts to unleash it. His eyes glow with a fierce light, and he's moving like a force of nature, putting all his energy to a stomp on the ground. This stomp creates a wave of energy. Shards of rock rise up from the ground and completely annihilate his enemies. This is Li Jian, and he is unstoppable. We leave the chaos and go back in time. To the earth in its younger days. A bright sunrise reminding him of his beginnings. How would you define me? Jvin asks introspectively. At one time, he was a fish swimming through a river. Another time, he was an eagle, soaring the skies. Once, he was an ant in a massive colony. There was also a time when he was a big, solitary dinosaur. From the time that the earth was molten, to the time it froze, and then finally to the time that it sprouted in green. He was born, lived, died, and reborn countless times. He has lived the lives of many creatures. He remembers them all, each life imprinted on his soul. Then, he recalls a memory of a thunderous bang. An elephant falls to the ground with a large thud. Not again! He exclaims. He was going to die at their hands once again. Humans, the one species he's learned to loathe over countless lifetimes. Their smug faces reflecting a primitive pride at the destruction of life. In this eternal dance of rebirth, he has met death naturally. Sometimes, he dies at the hands of stronger creatures. But humans were different. They killed not for survival, but for amusement. The speed at which they evolved their killing methods shocked him. He has been killed 1,000 times by humans. And he hates them intensely. The sun dips lower, casting long shadows over his reflections. He's been through countless rebirths, yet the same haunting questions cling to him at the end of every life. What will I be next? This persistent thought echoes inside him. Perhaps the cycle of lives won't ever release its grip. Why must he be reborn again? The dread of this eternal loop feels overwhelming. When will this all end? His consciousness flickers, the finality seems inevitable. In the silence, he pleads, I don't want to be reborn again. Yet the universe disagrees. A luminous pulse throbs through the darkness. He feels the spark ignite once more, life insists on beginning anew. The cycle painfully jostles him awake. His very essence groans under the force of creation. Energy swirls, and he can feel the formation of a familiar yet strange body. He's sure of one thing, the depth of this pain signals that he must be a mammal. Despite the multitude of existences he's endured, this level of agony is unprecedented. Yet, curiously, it fills him with a fervor for what's next. A fresh start beckons, offering a peculiar excitement amid the torment. His experiences have taught him a paradox. The harsher the burst's pain, the higher his species in the food chain. Light strips swirl into focus, and he contemplates time itself. How long has it really been? Suddenly, a newborn's gasp announces his arrival. He feels the sting of cold air, a sharp contrast against the gentle, comforting touch holding him. He blinks, vision still fuzzy, and understands the undeniable truth of his new form. A warm face, tear-streaked and tired, gazes down at him with overwhelming love. The species I loathe, he recognizes. There's no denying it, he's been reborn as the very thing he despises the most. A human. Li Jian! Someone calls out his name. Here, his mother replies to the nurse. This is the first time in all the lives he's lived that he has a name. Outside, people go about their daily business in the city. Here's the thing about humans, Jian muses, they complicate everything. They divide and distinguish themselves based on nationality and race and many other things. They name everything in the world and add meaning to it. Inside the doctor's clinic, the doctor reassures Jian's mother that everything's normal with Jian, but she presses on. She's restless. Why is little Jian still not speaking? His mother continues that he doesn't respond when she talks to him, and he didn't even cry when he was born. The doctor suggests it might be psychological, and his mother's frustration peaks. The doctor recommends that they see a psychiatrist. But his mother won't have it. Psych ward? she exclaims, practically on fire. "Are you saying that my son is crazy?" Giant listens to his mother argue with the doctor. His mother's name is Oh Youngshil. She was an uneducated woman and had a sad fate. First, she lost her parents to war. And then, in another war, she lost her husband. She was left all alone with a newborn baby. The world was too cruel to her. But she fights through it all, selling veggies and whatever else it takes to make sure her baby survived. Night falls, and Giant lays beside her, calm beneath his mother's hand. She once heard from somewhere that telling a baby good things will help them become a good person. And even if Giant never responded, she always told him how much she loved him. Giant could not understand what it meant, but he could feel the warmth of it. He doesn't mind, because there's comfort in her words. This was something that he had never experienced before. The calm of the night wraps around them as something stirs. Giant listens closely. Ribbits and croaks pierce the air, but it suddenly stops. A person sprints through the night, chased by several others. He trips and falls, landing hard. He falls to the ground, and the other men catch up to him. He shouts at them to let him go. "What are you saying? How can we let a communist go?" One of the men glares at him. The man fiercely denies this, and they tell him they'll work it out during the investigation. The leader looks up suddenly. He sees Giant illuminated under the moonlight, at the top of a pole, looking down at them with expressionless eyes. The group below looks up stunned. "That little boy," someone mutters in disbelief. Giant's mind is only thinking about one thing. "Get down, kid," the leader tells him. Giant ignores him, and thinks, "Adult humans. They will make the perfect test subjects." The leader's eyes widen. Giant leaps from the pole and glides down. "Frog," he thinks, and steadily lands on the ground, just like a frog. The people are freaking out like, "What the heck just happened?" They're all staring like he just fell from the sky. Suddenly, Giant's got this crazy electric aura, and lightning bolts erupt from his feet. He zooms towards them, like some kind of human rocket, glowing brighter than anyone should in the middle of the night. "Cheetah," he calls out in his mind. Meanwhile, the group of people watching is absolutely dumbstruck. Giant's eyes light up with this supernatural glow. He clenches his fist. One of the guys starts to pull out a gun. But Giant's not fazed. The word Argentinosaurus flashes through his brain. Giant charges in, landing a powerful punch. The dude with the gun gets sent flying, knocked out cold. The leader is left standing, jaw on the floor, like, "What the hell just happened?" Giant looks almost serene, standing amidst the chaos. Yeah, now he's sure. This is an entirely new phenomenon that's never happened in any of his past lives. He's standing there, soaking it all in with this quiet intensity. In this reincarnation, he was born with the powers of all his past lives. Questions are swirling around in his head, though. But why? No answers? Not yet. Just instincts and gut feelings driving him forward. And there's also another sensation he can't ignore. He feels it coming, feels the culmination of everything. He feels that this is going to be the end of a long line of reincarnations. He turns slightly contemplative. There's a finality to it all. This will be his last life. Back on the dirt road, the leader, who's barely keeping it together, lashes out. He's frustrated, afraid, practically shouting at this child who's somehow more than a child. Yet Giant simply stands there, calm amid the panic. He turns to face his adversary, listening to anger-fueled breathing and feeling every moment, every beat of his steady heart. This is what Giant has been waiting for. A small smile creeps across his face. There's a sense of peace in the knowledge that this is his last life and he can finally die. As Giant stands over the fallen man, the others watch him with shock and horror. Giant fidgets with his finger, observing the dead goon. The other man, that was being chased, is terrified. Giant remains unperturbed, standing firm in that strangely red outfit. Suddenly his eyes dart to the side. The thug leader yells, flinging a punch wildly, and Giant is thrown to the ground. He pauses for a moment, trying to understand what just happened. The leader, now out of breath, watches him. He's shocked when Giant struggles to pick himself up. "If I'm not concentrating, my body is just like any other humans," he analyzes. The thug flinches, seeing Giant massage his face as if it was nothing. Giant turns with cold, emotionless eyes. The thug's in disbelief. "What the?" he mutters as fear cascades over him. He goes in for another punch. But Giant is prepared this time. There's a heavy bash. The thug's reaction is like he's seen a ghost. His hand hangs useless in front of him. It looks broken. The thug collapses, wailing. It's not a pretty picture. "Turtle," says Giant in his mind, his eyes glowing an eerie blue. Suddenly, he grabs the thug by the neck. The thug is powerless as Giant squeezes. The thug trembles, eyes bugging out as if the world's closing in. Chimpanzee, Jian whispers, as he harnesses the chimpanzee's strength in his grip. There's an aura around him, fierce and unwavering. The thug loses consciousness, life draining from his eyes. Jian realizes that if he concentrates hard enough, he can be anything he wants. His eyes glow fiercer from this realization. Suddenly, a few bangs ring through the air. One of the men has picked up the gun and has fired at him. One bullet hits Jian's side. Jian stares blankly at the man, whose face is just pure terror. Jian begins to feel weak and falls to the ground. I let my guard down, he thinks. A few seconds pass, but Jian doesn't get up. The man, hands still trembling, lowers the gun and eventually drops it, feeling that the danger has passed. He can barely hold in his terror anymore, and he bolts, screaming his head off. Seeing this, the last of the goons also decides to run, leaving Jian motionless on the ground right next to the other bodies. The sun begins to rise the next day. Suddenly, there's a flicker of life. Jian's finger twitches. Through the haze, he pushes himself, slowly, painfully. With exhaustion draped over his slight frame, Jian struggles to get up. But it's too much, and he flops back to the ground. I got shot by that weird thing again. His thoughts stir. He reaches for his wound, sticky and raw. He muses that his organs have ruptured. Am I going to die? He asks himself. He looks up at the sky, waiting for his death to arrive. But suddenly, his body stiffens and then rises. He starts to wriggle and twitch, and his wound slowly begins to heal and close up. And then he springs up like a daisy in spring, surprising even himself. Then, with a big heave, he vomits a clear liquid. He retches until everything is purged. Sea cucumber. He thinks weakly in his mind. Jian rises from the ground. I survived, he murmurs, clutching at his wounded side. He's a bit annoyed that he didn't die yet. His survival instincts must have kicked into gear at the last minute. But he's also a bit amused. He's never experienced this before and it fuels his curiosity. This body was so small but so powerful that it didn't make sense. But then again, when has his existence ever made sense? He suddenly hears something. He can hear her voice desperately calling his name. She's calling out, voice filled with panic. The neighbors come out of their houses to see what the commotion was. Jian! She shouts. She's so full of fear and panic at the thought of losing her child. But Jian only stares. It doesn't affect him at all. He turns toward a scarecrow and notices a sparrow perched on it. The bird chirps, blissfully ignorant. Without warning, Jian darts forward and snatches it with uncanny dexterity. He lands softly, his mouth stuffed with his feathered prize. I'm not fully grown yet, but I can be self-sufficient if I try, he thinks while munching. There's no need to stay with her. An image of young Shil flashes through his mind, and her voice whispering, I love you. Deep down, a hint of longing surfaces. He turns toward where young Shil was. But eventually, he turns his back and decides to set off on his own. Back in the village, young Shil is heartbroken and cries out for her son. 4 days pass, and Jian has been walking the whole time. He looks dehydrated and weak. His legs finally give way and he falls to the ground with a thud. Exhaustion claims his body, yet his mind remains active. He feels feverish and like his stomach is tied up in knots. Was it something he ate? He wonders. He thinks about his diet the last few days. Humans were supposed to be omnivorous, weren't they? So what was the problem? He's experienced it many times, but he can never get used to this feeling. He knew he was dying. It's okay, he tells himself. He has no regrets, he thinks as the world slowly turns dark around him. He's ready to face his last death, but then, he hears a rustle of leaves. Someone was approaching. A figure steps out from the woods. It was young Shil. Oh, Jian thinks. He was not expecting this at all. Jian stares at her weakly, as she calls out with undeniable force. Jian! She runs to him, wrapping him in a fierce embrace. She rocks him gently, cradling both the boy and his tattered resolve. He was just an inch from death, but his mind was getting clearer. Hunger grips him. He wants the food that she makes for him. She's loud, he thinks to himself. How much longer is she going to do this? Stop it and give me food. It was at that moment that Jian wanted nothing more than to make her laugh instead of cry. He did not know what they meant, but he spoke human words for the first time in his life. Her eyes widen and the tears stop. He spoke the words that young Shil always told him with a warm smile. I love you, Jian says. Her face scrunches up, ready to cry again. Jian smiles at her weakly. But against his intentions, the uneducated and unfortunate young Shil, no, Jian's mother, cried and cried for a long time. Jian rests softly against her, his face is battered, yet there's a quiet peacefulness in his gaze. That day, staring at the sunset while wrapped in his mother's tight embrace, John thinks that this sunset, among all the other sunsets in all his other lifetimes, was the most extraordinary and beautiful sunset of all. Let's stay like this for a bit longer. Just until I can survive on my own, John thinks. We jump into a police station interrogation room. Some dude's trying to convince the cops a little boy caused all this chaos. He's swearing up and down that he killed the kid. The detectives are grilling him, wanting to know how only Detective An's corpse ended up at the scene. What happened to the kid? The man didn't have an answer for that. The man tells the detective that he was sure he shot him. That's right. You shot Detective An. His interrogator counters. The man vehemently denies this. He pleads to the other detective at the scene. Why are you just standing there? Say something. It's the other detective. He's in a neck brace and an arm cast. But the detective just freezes him out with silence. Who's believing this story? Apparently nobody. The room's about as hot as it can get before the detective loses his cool and says to deal with him. The accused is hauled out, shouting why the detective was doing this. The investigators aren't buying the story about a little boy killer. The man insists that the boy killed Detective An and he killed the boy. One of them lights up a cigarette, dismissing the hysteria. The detective stares at the prisoner. Looks like he's got something to hide. Days pass after the incident, and life goes back to normal. But John notices that ever since that day, Young Shil always held his hand tightly so she wouldn't lose him again. Her grip is warm, her smile comforting. He did not mind all that Young Shil did for him, and that thought really scared him. The years pass, and it's time for John to go to school. You beat my boy up? A woman yells. It's Young Shil scolding her son's bullies. The teacher tries to calm her down, but she's having none of it. If you want kids to fight, then let your own kids fight, she screams at the teacher. She now turns to the bullies and threatens to snap their wrists off if they ever do it again. As he watches his mother, John comes to the conclusion that Young Shil was only ever kind to him. Another time, there were two elderly ladies gossiping about John. Young Shil overhears all of this and loses it, flames of fury practically shooting from her eyes. She's defending John like a lioness, telling them to quit talking trash. And still another time, at the market, Young Shil is fighting again. She rants about the country's injustices, claiming they've taken everything from her. And now they want to take her business. John watches as she tells the men that they are going to starve if she can't sell her vegetables there. Suddenly, she drops to the ground, daring them to kill her. John ponders how Young Shil fought everything in the world, every day. Flash forward, and time's passing like a breeze through the field of daisies. John is trying life on the human side, adapting bit by bit. They're at a field of daisies, and Young Shil asks John if she looks pretty. John just stares while Young Shil smiles at him. She stands with a gentle smile, extending a reassuring hand towards John. Her eyes speaking volumes. It was always like this every time John thinks about leaving. Young Shil's warm hand reaches out to his, making it very hard to leave. John suddenly pauses his innocent eyes full of curiosity. He can't help but ask, "Why do you fight every day?" Young Shil pauses, trying to find the right words. "To protect you," she answers, her voice firm. John looks at her, those words cementing a bond that nothing seems capable of breaking. Suddenly, the wind picks up, playfully snatching the daisy from Young Shil's hair. She grins as it floats away. "Let's head back," she suggests warmly. "I'll cook something special for you." John realizes that the one thing he hoped never to happen, finally did. He wants to stay by Young Shil's side. As they walk, a figure looms in the distance. The man crouches, grasping the fallen daisy, eyes narrowing as he watches them leave. His presence is dark, foreboding. "Found you, you monster," he murmurs, a sinister edge to his voice. It's the detective from a long time ago. John glances back, as if sensing an unseen shadow. His gaze is set. Whatever comes, he's not ready to part with Young Shil just yet. Survival of the fittest. It's the ruthless law of the jungle. The weak fall to the strong. There's no escape from this unending cycle. It's seen as the natural order of life. But not all deaths are easy to swallow. Take this, for example. This one was killed for a human to overcome the heat. This one was killed to overcome the cold. This one was killed in the name of science and innovation. This one was killed to carry money. This one for bragging rights. And sometimes, even for boredom. It's pathetic, John thinks, while staring at the humans down below. Still, life keeps turning. John is now 12 years old. He's fishing for food from the stream. He has assimilated into human society. His neighborhood has been changing rapidly over the years. Roads were built and buildings began to grow taller and taller. However, it's not all sunshine and development. Industrial smoke rises, polluting what was once a crystal-clear stream. Factories by the river outside his home paint a stark picture of progress. Giant arrives at his house. Inside, Youngshil lies in bed, unwell. It's mealtime. Giant takes a bite of food, and immediately a frown sets in. He spits his food out, much to Youngshil's confusion. "Why'd you spit it out? Does it have bones?" she quizzes. His instinct just rebels against it. Youngshil scolds Giant. She explains that these fish aren't easy to catch, urging Youngshil not to be a picky eater. Giant can't be convinced to eat. "No," he says. Youngshil is momentarily flustered but shrugs it off. "Fine, it's your loss," she says. She starts eating Giant's share. Giant looks on, and in hindsight ponders that he should have stopped her from eating it too. After the meal, Youngshil is back in bed, and Giant is tending to her. Youngshil watches him and gives him a brave smile, but Giant doesn't smile back. He stands up and Youngshil asks, "Are you going to school?" Giant only nods. "Enjoy your day, my boy," she warmly wishes. Outside, back in a bustling town, life moves forward. People interact, vendors call out, children run around. It's a scene of vibrant normalcy. In one corner of town, Giant has set up a stand and is selling apples. He ponders many things while selling. Humans have destroyed the land for convenience's sake, and that development is now eating away at them, just like the rot on this apple. Why does Youngshil have to bear the cost of all these changes? He reflects, as he drops the bruised apple among a pile of healthier ones. Out of nowhere, a hand reaches out to touch an apple. "They look delicious," a man says and asks how much they are. 10 won, Youngshil replies. The man bites into one with a loud crunch, remarking how expensive it is while savoring the taste. The rules humans make, like laws, are supposed to keep things in check but often just mask differences. In the past, he broke a rule, an unbreakable one. Murder. Giant stares into the eyes of the detective. His eye flashes in recognition. The detective tells him he wanted to stop by earlier, but he wanted to see how monsters like him grew up. He's got that mocking smirk, asking Giant why he was pretending to be human. Giant remains silent, unfazed. The detective remarks about how Giant still has nothing to say, and orders his men to get him. A crowd has now gathered, curious to see the commotion was, and why they had to lock up a boy in handcuffs. The detective's men wonder if they can really take a boy in like that. The detective declares that he's being arrested for being a spy. Giant remains emotionless. "And if you're a spy," the detective says threateningly, "your mom is also a spy. My men are on their way to your house now." He says this with an evil smile. Giant's eyes widen at this news. The detective cruelly drops that his mom was sick and will probably not endure their interrogation, suggesting torture would be involved. Suddenly, something cracks inside Giant. Energy swirls around him, visible to everyone. The man notices this too, but stays collected, curious yet cautious. "Step away from him. You could die," he warns his lackeys. They exchange looks, confused. With a forceful stomp, Youngshil shatters the ground. The street rumbles, leaving the crowd bewildered and unsure. What kind of power are they witnessing? Amidst the chaos, the man's grin suggests he's intrigued rather than frightened. Giant leaps into action and launches himself, quickly disappearing in front of the men. The crowd bursts into chatter, disbelief palpable in the air. "Can't you tell?" the detective says calmly. "He a monster," he finishes as they watch Giant running away from them. Giant recognizes him as the man who called him a monster back then. That man has severely underestimated him. He has no clue what Giant is capable of. It was this exact day that humans had triggered a tremendous disaster. We jump forward into the future, in a sprawling city. Li Giant stands lost in the urban jungle. Despite humanity's physical weakness, they hold the top spot on the food chain thanks to one key trait: communication. Precise and detailed communication has enabled humans to form societies and develop at a fast pace. Giant ponders this as he moves through the bustling crowd, almost invisible despite the chaos around him. He reflects that there are words embedded within him too. Words that he can't forget. He recalls his mother's last moments, and wonders if they're a blessing or a curse. We move back to an earlier time in Giant's life. He's running barefoot through a stream, away from the policeman, and towards his mother. His pace quickens, sprinting faster, leaping through the air like a superhero. He lands on a dirt road with a thud. With determination, he activates his legs with a spark, and he sets off again with intense speed. Meanwhile, back at the police station, a pair of detectives are having a smoke. "Are you okay?" one of them asks. They chat about how crazy it is to call a 12-year-old a North Korean spy. They talk about the lieutenant who has put his career on the line, by bringing a huge force to catch the kid. One of them answers that he can understand why. His friend asks why he was against this operation in the first place. He looks at his hand and sees it trembling. He remembers the boy's face and the horrors he witnessed years ago. "It's because I'm scared," he tells his friend. At that moment, in Jian's home, the police have the house surrounded. An order to drag her out echoes through the air. They start knocking at the gate. Jian comes flying in, arriving just in time. He lands behind them with a thud. How did he get here so fast? They turn around and find an exhausted but defiant child. Jian looks up at them with a glare. His presence raises questions. They didn't expect him to just appear out of thin air. Wait, was he the kid who lived in this house? Jian nods. Yes, he's the kid they're looking for. The men are skeptical. Lieutenant Kim might have overreached this time. What can a kid like him really do? The leader orders them to take him in for interrogation. "Hey, you need to come with us, kid," the leader says, towering over him menacingly. Jian clenches his fists. Is he ready for this? Just then, a door slides open to reveal Youngshil, looking weary but fierce. The men all stare at her blankly, not knowing what to do. Her eyes focus on Jian, surrounded by all these men. One of the men says something about Youngshil looking too sick. But orders are orders. The leader tells them to take both Jian and Youngshil. Youngshil stumbles, trying to comprehend. They're taking her boy. Not without a fight. Youngshil gathers every bit of strength she had and yells. She calls to everyone in the village. "We have kidnappers! Please someone help us!" A scuffle breaks out, and Youngshil screams some more. She was practically dying moments ago, but now she looks fine. One of the men mutters. Maybe she really is a spy. Suddenly, someone taps Youngshil on the shoulder. Bam! The slap echoes as Youngshil takes a surprising hit, sending her reeling. Jian's eyes widen at the sight of his mother getting hurt. She staggers but catches herself. Jian feels chills running down his spine. He's boiling with anger from head to toe. The guy who beside him turns to look. Small cracks have appeared under Jian's feet. That last thread of sanity? Gone. Something deep within her snaps. It is over in a few seconds. Bodies are scattered everywhere. Jian's eyes widen as he stands in the dirt, bloody and grim, but with a strange calmness. Youngshil looks at the scene with disbelief. Bodies litter the ground, a testament to a fight they probably didn't expect. Youngshil, on her knees, calls out, "Jian!" her voice breaking. Tears mingle with dirt as she looks at him, a strong yet vulnerable expression. The distance between them seems so great. Jian realizes that he did it again. A vehicle screeches to a stop, dust billowing around it. Laughter comes from the vehicle. It's the lieutenant, thinking he's won some twisted game. Jian turns, his face emotionless, still in rage mode. "What did I say? I told you he's a monster!" The lieutenant triumphantly exclaims, pointing at Jian as the kid just stands there. He warns his men not to get too near or else they'll end up dead. Jian clenches his fist, anger simmering under his calm facade, ready to face off with his next opponents. Suddenly, Youngshil approaches, and puts herself in front of Jian. "I'm the one who killed him!" Youngshil screams, trying to redirect the blame. This fierce woman, who seemed weak moments ago, stands strong, ready to protect. Her voice cracks. "My boy did nothing wrong. It was just me," she screams. The soldiers are surprised. Youngshil, who barely has the strength to keep her food, is now a force, yelling at the top of her lungs to protect her child. Why? Jian wonders to himself. Images of happier times flash through his mind, a past with more sunshine and fewer fears. Jian clutches his chest, overwhelmed, feeling the burn of both anger and love. He looks at Youngshil, desperate and driven to save her child. A tear trails down his cheek. The answer becomes crystal clear in his mind. To protect you. Jian, who had never shed a tear his whole life, now had tears flowing freely down his face, knowing that his mother would lay down her own life just to protect him. "I'm the one who killed him!" Youngshil yells as the men watch on. "My boy did no wrong! It was me!" She keeps yelling, tears streaming down her face. She throws herself in front of Jian, ready to sacrifice herself. The cops are taken aback, stunned by her boldness and ferocity. Amidst it all, young Jian sobs quietly, overcome by his mother's selflessness. Quietly, the lieutenant loads his gun. He prepares to fire, ice cold as he takes aim at Youngshil. At the last second, he aims for her leg instead. Jian stands firm. He must protect Youngshil. The lieutenant smiles a cruel grin. "Let's see," he murmurs ominously. A gunshot splits the air. Youngshil's face is a mix of fear and surprise. A miraculous thing happens. Jian takes the bullet, shielding Youngshil with his own body. His eyes blaze with an unyielding light. The lieutenant laughs gleefully, convinced of his invincibility. "Shoot that woman!" comes the frantic scream. Young Shil and Giant brace against the onslaught. A subordinate resists, telling him they're not resisting. The lieutenant's temper flares. "You idiots!" he roars. He reminds them they're gonna end up like them if they don't do anything. Panic swells amongst his men. "This is an order!" he commands, escalating the chaos. Reluctantly, they follow, guns blazing. But Giant? He stands unwavering, eyes fierce. Young Shil watches with horror. Bullets rain down on them. "I can do this!" Jin's thoughts run like a mantra. He's reaching back across multiple lifetimes, tapping into all of their abilities. Giant reaches out a hand and catches a bullet midair. He's unfazed, even as Young Shil falls beside him. Giant mutters, "I can do this!" The armor of his spirit unyielding. He becomes an impenetrable wall, every bullet bouncing harmlessly away. The word armadillo echoes in his mind, a protective shield. Even more shots ring out, and they're all shocked by Giant's defense. Young Shil gasps, doesn't dare to blink. She sees Giant, huffing from exertion but still defiant, ready for another round. Blood trickles, but Giant's focus doesn't waver. His eyes, blazing with anger, meet the lieutenant's fearful gaze. "What are you waiting for? Keep shooting," the lieutenant orders his men. He spurs them on, barking orders to his faltering crew. Giant gears up for another barrage of bullets. He has no choice, he has to push himself to do it one more time. And suddenly his mother's presence is felt. She jumps in front of Giant and wraps him in her arms. The lieutenant is surprised. Young Shil has now placed herself in the line of fire. Giant's eyes widen with horror. "It's fine, honey," she reassures him tenderly, her voice a balm to his weary soul. Tears form in Giant's eyes as he realizes what's happening. The bullets hit, and Young Shil is thrown back. Powerless to do anything, Giant watches the horror unfold in front of his eyes. Finally, his mother falls to the ground. He's a mess, scratches and blood cover him, and he's trying to get out that one impossible word, Mom. Young Shil is still conscious. She reaches out a hand and touches Giant's cheek. Her eyes slowly flutter open, looking right at him. In Giant's mind, memories flash, a tender moment with his mom, her smile gentle and reassuring. They share a gaze, two souls tied together by love and heartache. His tears fall, one by one, tracing down his cheek, reflecting the agony inside. Slowly, Young Shil's hand lowers and drops, as her last bits of life fade away. Above, the sun sets on another day, and the world turns just like it always has. But for Giant, this day will forever be seared in his memory. Suddenly, there's darkness. And a small drop of water creates ripples. Young Shil opens her eyes. She's somewhere else, a dreamlike realm. Young Shil blinks, confused, thinking, "What is this? Heaven?" She turns and sees a younger Giant before her, crying like the world's ending. But her smile cuts through his storm, soft, warm, just like home. "You were a tough baby, never cried this much," she says, humor soothing the jagged edges of the moment. "But why are you crying now?" Giant crumbles, apologizing for everything. He's confused. He doesn't know what to do. Why does he even have these powers? His mom's death hits him again, guilt crashing over him like a wave. Why did she have to die, when it should have been him? And there she is, embracing him, love unwavering amid his storm. She whispers how having him was her biggest blessing in the world. "Thank you," she says, holding Giant in her embrace. Giant tells her he'll follow her soon. His mother pauses for a moment. She holds his shoulders, giving him her last piece of advice. His mom's steady gaze catches his. "Promise me one thing." Giant's eyes widen, clinging to that moment, listening to his mother's words. Her lips move softly. He nods at his mother's words. Suddenly, he's back in reality, his mother's body cold beside him. "Giant!" His mother's last words echo in the fading light. His grief burns through tears, raw and intense. "Giant, promise me one thing. No matter what happens, no matter what it takes." Chills run down the thug leader's spine while looking at Giant's face. A new, stronger kind of blaze erupts around Giant. "Survive until the end," were his mother's last words, forever etched into his heart, fueling his rage and resolve. Why was the lieutenant so obsessed with Giant? There are multiple reasons, but the answer was simple. Arrogance. Humans are so confident about their abilities to understand everything. So they fear what they can't explain. That's why they try to eliminate anything different. Young Shil now lies lifeless on the ground. Her last words echo. "Survive until the end." Giant feels the loss deeply. He can't do it. He can't fit in and live with these despicable humans. Survive until the end. Sticks like a mantra. To fulfill this wish, he might have to hurt, or even kill humans again. He remembers the dream where Youngshil was comforting him through tears. No matter what it takes, survive until the end, Youngshil tells him. And now, Youngshil is lying dead in front of him. Giant chokes back tears, but determination hardens his face. His enemies recoil in surprise. But suddenly, Giant bolts, leaving the scene behind. His mission's clear: stay alive at all costs. He is going to survive. He lands deftly on the rooftop, casting a defiant look back. Below, the gang freaks out. What the heck are you doing? He's escaping, the lieutenant shouts. They scramble into their vehicles. He's weak right now, the leader insists. It's now or never. Giant just keeps running, a blur against the sunset sky. A car spins into chase mode, tires ripping through wildflowers. But Giant races through the flower fields, with the truck following close behind. Once again, memories of peaceful times with Youngshil among these flowers flash through his mind. Giant keeps on running. The field stretches on endlessly, but he keeps going, until finally, he slows down. As the car closes in, an inevitable confrontation looms. The lieutenant's at the wheel with a crazed look in his eyes. The truck screeches to a stop. The gang taunts him, thinking they've got him cornered. You think I would run? Giant asks. He just couldn't do it at the village, or else his mom would get hurt. He apologizes, hands covering his face. The gang grows uneasy. Why is he apologizing? That person I killed before, and the ones I killed today, and those of you before me who are about to die, they must have mothers. They were all loved, and have loved once, Giant explains. Just like me, he finishes, with a cold look in his eye. The lieutenant sneers, still believing he had the upper hand. Giant acknowledges that he's made some mistakes. But you are exactly the same, he says, unsettling them with raw honesty. He points out that humans kill without self-awareness, and destroy everything. You ruin everything, he says with cold, dead eyes. The goons are confused. They don't know what he means. Giant grows pensive. He's always wondered why he kept getting reincarnated again and again. He's wondered why he was given these powers. But now he understands. The air crackles with an intense energy. Even the goons can feel it. Giant's fists clench tight, streaks of electric blue spiraling around him as raw power gathers. He can feel it deep in his bones. You humans are destructive and good for nothing, he tells them. The ground starts to crack underneath their feet. A whisper of purpose leaves his lips. I exist to bring about the human race's extinction. And with that, the ground beneath him rumbles, sending tremors that crack the earth. Faces contorted in shock and panic, the gang backs off, realizing the true weight of their threat. Not so confident now, are they? The lieutenant looks up. Giant is now up in the air, leaving the trembling gang frozen. Suspended against the backdrop of a blazing sunset, he hurtles back down like a comet. The gang leaders scream, loud and guttural, echoes as Giant crashes down like a hammer, a resounding kaboom, marking his arrival. A few minutes later, the jeep lies overturned and smoldering. The scene is littered with the defeated, their bodies covered in blood and dust. As the sky wears a hue of twilight, Giant approaches. He looks down at the carnage. As the gang leader lies bloodied and beaten, he gasps. I knew it. I was right. You have to die. Even now, he calls Giant a monster, insisting he should never have existed. Giant, expression inscrutable, acknowledges the truth in their words without flinching. He steps closer to the lieutenant. You're right. You should have killed me, he mutters. The lieutenant looks up at him, gasping for air. Standing before the fallen leader, he leans in, words sharp and cutting. But you failed. And for that reason, Giant begins, while raising his hand. The lieutenant's eyes bulge in horror. Not a single human in this world will be left alive. The lieutenant screams in horror. As the blow lands, the noise echoes loud and final, thwack. It's nighttime now. In the dark solitude, Giant walks. He carries a figure gently in his arms, his steps deliberate, under the moon's watchful eye. Youngshil rests cold against his small frame. Lost, without direction, Giant trudges on. Perhaps it was because of exhaustion, but he could almost hear Youngshil's voice whispering through the night. Scenes flash through his mind, memories of a gentle smile, words of comfort, warmth shared in another life, and finally, he remembers the day he was born. He's heard these words from her 1,000 times throughout his life. I love you. And it was then, in the dark solitude, that he finally responds, me too. The Giant trudges through grass, feet stained and worn. A dark depression has settled upon him. He thinks about the 10 years he spent with his mother. Time meant little to someone who's lived eternally. Yet, those years held everything. His mother, her love was a gift he'd never known before. It was the happiest he had ever been in all his existence. Right now, each step is heavy with grief. He can't help but blame himself for her death. No life, or death, had ever been this painful. His mother's words echo. Survive until the end. Her voice, still a guiding comfort. He pauses, but knows he must move forward. Each step, a reluctant obedience to her last wish. Okay, he murmurs quietly, and faces another day. The days pass and winter comes. A hunter lies in the snow, rifle in hand. A pheasant sits unaware, inviting the hunter's aim. With a sharp raise, the hunter's about to seal its fate. A loud bang, the bird's flight turns fatal. The hunter laughs, victory in his voice. Then, something odd. Giant stands there. The hunter is confused, startled by this boy in a rugged state. Hey kid, the hunter calls out. How did you get here? These are hunting grounds and it's dangerous. Giant remains silent, observing the lifeless pheasant. First time seeing one? The hunter asks, excited by his catch. Giant coldly questions his pride. A twitch in Giant's hand signals something stirring. His eyes glow with an otherworldly light. Where are you parents? He asks, oblivious to what was happening. Giant's shoulders sink as memories rush back. They're dead. He finally responds in a small voice. The hunter, quiet, takes a step closer. Well, it's winter, he says and wraps his coat around the boy. Curiosity and concern tug at him. Aren't you cold? Giant is speechless at the unexpected kindness. The hunter takes Giant's hand. Let's go to my house, he says. They head home, a modest house nestled in snow. Mother! I'm back, announces the hunter. She braved the cold to greet them. He scolds his mother for being outside when it's too cold. But first things first, the boy needs a bath. You stink, he quips. Inside, a warm meal awaits. Pheasant sizzles on the grill. This looks great. They chat, eager to dig in. Giant sits quietly. Loud noises break the moment. Construction sounds, the hunter explains, from the mountain next to them. Risotto or something? Giant, deep in thought, barely registers it. Suddenly curious, the hunter asks Giant about his journey. How'd you climb all the way to the top of our mountain? Giant just says I walked. Simple. Honest. The hunter nods, assessing the situation. There's nothing here, he admits. It wasn't a good environment for a kid to grow up in. Plans form to bring Giant to the village at the bottom of the mountain. They'll find someone to take Giant so he can go to school. Giant eats slowly, savoring the warmth and normalcy. The hunter gently scolds him, playful but firm. With a wide grin, he jokes that maybe they'll teach him some manners in school. Giant stands there, eyes wide. He doesn't say a word, just absorbing it all. The night sky spreads above, deep blue and dotted with stars, casting a serene but chilly vibe over the hunter's house. Giant stares at the photos scattered around the house. A husband and wife, looking formal and stiff, holding a baby. The next image is brighter, a father and his son setting off while the mother watches, smiling. A formal portrait of the man, wearing a suit, looking all serious. Lastly, it's the hunter and his mother, together. But now they're fast asleep. The hunter is sprawled out, snoring away without a care. His mother snoozes peacefully on the other side. Giant's just staring at the box beside the man's portrait. He's all tucked in, nice and cozy, between the hunter and the granny. This is a new feeling for Giant, and he takes everything in. The next morning, they're all outside, preparing to set out for the village. The hunter and granny exchange glances. It's a little too long, the hunter observes. They've dressed Giant up in some old clothes, but they're a bit too big. The hunter chuckles, kneeling to roll up pants. Here, let's fold it. Like this, he demonstrates with a soft touch. Giant's eyes briefly soften, a hint of gratitude masked by his usual stoic demeanor. All right. We're ready. Let's go, the hunter announces, as they prepare to leave. He turns to his mom, assuring, Mother, we'll be back soon. His smile is warm, hopeful. She waves them off. Giant follows closely, eyes reflecting the sky that's starting to grumble. It seems nature has different plans for today. They walk along the snow-covered road, each step crunching underfoot. Giant, deep in thought, suddenly asks, Your mother, she doesn't seem to talk very much, sir. The man laughs heartily, giving Giant's head a playful rub. Come on, kiddo. So you knew how to talk politely? Giant rolls his eyes but remains silent. Beneath his calm facade, there's a flurry of curiosity. She can't talk, the man admits, his expression momentarily serious. It's because she's deaf. Jin furrows his brow. If she can't hear, why do you keep talking to her? Even though she can't hear what I'm saying, it seems like she understands what my heart is trying to say to her. The man shrugs softly. And that's all he really needs, actually? Giant ponders the man's words. Just then, raindrops begin to fall, slowly at first, but rapidly escalating into a downpour. Oh no, it's raining! The man exclaims, a hint of worry in his voice. The rain shows no signs of letting up. He suggests they find cover, leading Giant to a nearby shelter. Both of them were unaware that they were right underneath the construction site. Who would have expected rain like this in winter? The man remarks as they waited out in the small cave. Suddenly, the earth trembles. Too many trees were cut down for the development, leaving the ground unstable. It gives way, a sudden, violent collapse, right on top of where Giant and the hunter were sheltering. The landslide is over in minutes. In the aftermath, they find that the man is pinned underneath the landslide. Giant was luckier as he was thrown a few meters away. The man coughs, spitting out mud and rainwater. He's bleeding really badly. Are you okay? The man's voice asks, barely audible over the storm, putting Giant's safety over his. Panic fuels Giant as he dashes towards the man. He digs frantically, mud flying everywhere. Oh dear! The man sighs weakly. Giant yells, Hold on! I'll get you out of here soon, sir! But the man is fading, his breath shallow. Mother! He gasps, calling out for his mother during his last moments. Giant looks on in shock. His head droops, spirit waning. Giant stands frozen, helpless under the deluge. The rain continues unabated, a relentless drumbeat on the earth. Giant stops digging. He knows it's futile. He remembers what the man was telling him. That there was construction going on over at the next mountain. He stares up with sadness at the sky. The man's voice echoes back to him. What did they call it? Risotto? The storm shows no sign of stopping. Giant slowly trudges along the muddy path, with the hunter's body on his back. He clutches his coat tighter, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. Somewhere up the road, a lone figure stands. It's the grandmother, waiting for their return, umbrellas in hand. Her eyes widen in shock as she takes in the scene. Her steady gaze lands on her son. The umbrella slips from her fingers, hitting the ground. At that moment, the rest of the world fades away, except for her son and the boy. It's the day after the storm. The sun is out and the skies are clear. At the house, Giant is quiet, lost in his thoughts. He stares out the window, mind swirling with the previous day's events. His eyes close, shutting out the world for a moment. Memories surface of the policemen at the village, the rage he felt towards them, and their final destruction. If he were to be honest with himself, he was just venting his anger that day, when he made a vow to eliminate every single human in the world. He was still thinking about it. But something keeps him hesitating. He wasn't sure if it was the right thing to do. He ponders some more and another memory surfaces. It was a memory of his mom looking at his exam paper, which was left completely blank. His mom's not taking it well, asking if he's illiterate like her. Giant, in his usual cool demeanor, just says, I didn't know the answer, so I left it blank. Her advice? Just write something, anything. Giant replies that he did not know the right answer. Then comes a moment of quiet understanding between them. Back to the present, Giant stares at the clear skies. Looks like he's made up his mind. Meanwhile, somewhere at the next mountain, was the opening of a brand new, flashy resort, or risotto as the hunter called it. Snip goes the ribbon and applause fills the space. There's a crowd of reporters there today, and the owners are putting out their best to impress. A big shot in a fancy coat shakes hands, looking confident, but hey, something catches his eye. What's that? He asks, looking at a tiny figure in the distance. A kid? Here? Now? The big shot's not pleased, and tells security to hustle the kid out. The security guy runs to block his way, telling him to scram. But wait, something stops the guy in his tracks. Behind Giant is a trail of blood, leading to the mangled bodies of other security guards. Giant's deep in thought, his mom's voice echoes in his mind. Even if you don't know the answer, solve the question. With a warm smile, she says, Who cares if you get 0 points? It's okay to be wrong. This advice was his guide for his decision now. The guard stumbles back in horror. If you really can't figure it out, just solve the question however you want to. Echoes his mom's voice. Giant has made up his mind. He's done with hesitating. The guard is in a panic sweat now. But Giant, he's calm as ever, with a chilling promise. I will kill you all. No hesitation now, his earlier resolve spins into a grim determination. To be really honest, this is what he really wanted to do in the first place. A few hours pass and Giant stands on a ledge. Blood-stained and determined, he surveys the town below, knowing each day he gets stronger. His thoughts are intense. Extinction, he murmurs to himself, understanding the weight of his mission. He knows it's no easy task, but he's ready to face it head-on. His hands, still red from battle, hang by his side, a stark reminder of what's necessary. In a flashback, we see the chaos left behind, a mass of fallen foes, a testament to his resolve. Jian stands alone, heightening his determination with a single thought, that he can do what must be done. Shifting to the calm of the mountains, sunlight creeps over the landscape, a gentle contrast to the previous carnage. There's a grave with a photo of the hunter, and next to it was another grave, the hunter's mother. The shock of her son's death was too much, and she passed away in her sleep not long after. Jian takes in his memories of them, their weight turning into fuel for thought. Sitting there, he figures out his next move. First, he needs to test the extent of his powers. Right now, he knows he holds the collective strength from his past lives, and he can be anything he wanted. The only problem is, when he stops concentrating, his body becomes just a normal human body. He needs to step up his game. Fast forward one crazy year later, a train is approaching. Jian's about to challenge this train head-on, just to test himself. The conductor freaks out at what he sees ahead. It's Jian, unyielding in the middle of the tracks. With a whistle blast slicing through the air, the train barrels toward him. But he's not flinching. The train screeches, the conductor's scream reverberates, as Jian remains calm despite the impending impact. Then wham! The collision scene is nuts. Jian is thrown high into the air, and lands with a sickening crash. The train driver rushes out to save the boy, but he's surprised. He looks everywhere for him, but he's disappeared. Jian, meanwhile, is already at a distance, walking away. He had just harnessed the power of a limpet shell's teeth, and trained himself to maintain it even when he's not focusing. One more year passes. Jian now has the ability to communicate with other creatures. It wasn't words, though, it was more like telepathy. He was able to understand them on a deeper level. What's strange was that, being in a human body played the biggest role in developing this sixth sense. Most creatures in this earth have an affinity towards humans. Which was really a mystery. But then things fast forward again, 5 years later. Jian has grown into an adult now. This grown version of Jian has hit his prime. He's matured into this powerhouse, looking fierce and ready. He wants to remain in this state for as long as he can. So he's used his powers as a turtle to make that happen. But guess what? Time flies. Another 10 years pass, and the world isn't what it used to be. Heavy smoke billows from factories, darkening the sky. What a mess! The rivers are choked with plastic waste, a sad testament to human excess. Yet, amid this despair, nature seems to hold its breath, hopeful against the odds. Now, Jian's communication skills have expanded greatly. His connection with nature isn't just with animals anymore, it's with earth, water, even plants. He can feel it, deep inside. Living souls are ingrained in even the simplest objects. He's connected to the entire planet. He can feel it. It's suffering. It's dying. He looks out over a modern city, confronted by human progress clashing with nature, but he wasn't ready just yet. Another 30 years pass. Jian's journey has been about mastering his powers. Years of relentless training have expanded his abilities. And there was no limit to what he could accomplish. Furthermore, he had found a way to combine all his different powers. His eyes burned with blue intensity because he knew, finally, that his preparations were almost complete. Is it finally time? He wonders to himself. Yes, he thinks. Now is the time to act. On top of his mountain, surrounded by a lush forest, Jian meditates silently, feeling his power. Flames burst forth from the ground, igniting beneath his feet. He's channeling immense power, combining heat with more heat, causing pressure. If he repeats this enough times, he is able to cause an earthquake. Jian recalls his past, a major quake he had already triggered before. The world map flashes, pinpointing 6 locations where he can shake the earth like that again. Once the earthquakes are triggered, this will split the continents into 42 fragments, and half will sink under the sea. Standing amidst the wreckage in his mind, he assures himself that no human could ignore this disaster. This will be the end of the human race. A chilling vision is shown of him standing atop a mountain of skulls. He can't explain it, but he has a feeling that this is exactly what will happen. He looks up at the sky. He knows humans won't be the only ones wiped out. Many other species will be driven to extinction. But still, this is something that he has to do. He must do it, even if it's difficult. His thoughts wander to the humans living in the city below. He's been alone for decades. He wonders if he should take one last look at how humans have been living recently, but he swiftly contradicts himself. Nah, he's watched humans for ages, nothing new. But his eyes suddenly flicker with memories, glimpses of his mother, and the kind hunter who gave him shelter. Maybe he should have a look anyway. I can always start the extinction anytime I want, he convinces himself. He extinguishes the flames from his feet, and the ground stops rumbling. He's in no rush as he slowly walks toward human civilization. The destruction of the human race will have to wait another day. Elsewhere, a boat sails silently over the water. Soon, he's on a beach, but it's littered with careless human leftovers. He's in a lush forest, but it's still full of humans. He realizes that no matter where he goes, no place has managed to escape the touch of humans. He's alone on the road, steps echoing in the quiet night. This road was also the same. There was once a forest filled with the smell of acacia here, but now it's gone. He halts abruptly. He's changed his mind. Frustration and annoyance at what humans were doing, he thinks about just ending them all right then. But suddenly, a loud honk cuts through. Lights flash in front of him, coming fast, but he doesn't flinch. That sound isn't natural. It wasn't supposed to exist in this world. His eyes glow with fierce blue energy. Suddenly, like lightning, he shatters the road between them. A driver screeches to avoid the chaos. Above, he dislodges a large boulder and sends it hurtling down toward the car. Jian watches with indifference as the car loses control. As the car screeches closer, the driver's face comes into focus. Confusion hits as Jian's eyes widen. What's happening? A simple flower enters his vision. What do you think? A familiar voice asks him. He's in so much shock. I'm pretty, right? Says Youngshil in his memories, placing a daisy in her hair. The woman in the car looks exactly like Youngshil, his beloved mother. Jian is speechless. But the boulder is almost about to hit her car. Jian springs into action. He bolts forward, punching through the rock with raw power. The rock splits in two, and Jian lands on the roof. The driver clenches the steering wheel tight, trying to take control of the car. She opens her eyes for a peek, and the unexpected happens. Someone's face pops out, looking at her upside down. The driver lets out a scream. Up above, another massive boulder is threateningly perched on a cliff, teetering on the edge. The massive rock plummets, aimed straight for the car. Wham! It hits Jian square on the head. The driver recoils in shock. Jian is caught off guard, and the impact sends him into shock. The sound of screeching tires fills the air as the car brakes violently. The sudden braking sends Jian tumbling a few meters in front. The driver swings the door open, rushes to the fallen Jian. Jian can't believe this is happening. He's managed to maintain his abilities unconsciously, but seeing his mom's face again made him lose control. The woman dashes over, adrenaline kicking her into high gear. She kneels down, checking on him. She looks like she's yelling something, but Jian could only think about how like they looked. Jian's eyes flicker as he begins to fade away. It's been a while since he's felt this, the feeling of dying. But wait, what's this? Flickering lights? Jian's eyes suddenly fly open. Staring back at him is the woman who looked like his mother, and a nurse. Jian, with his head bandaged and hair shaved off, is at a complete loss. He sits up abruptly, clearly startled. The nurse kindly suggests taking it easy. He's just had surgery, and post-op isn't fun. Surgery? Jian echoes, touching the bandage cautiously. The nurse explains briefly. They couldn't ID him, so they couldn't get a guardian's signature. But the surgery was urgent, so they went ahead with it. What's your name? The nurse asks, prompting a blank stare from Jian. His name? Lost somewhere in a fog of time and confusion. Jian pauses, thinking hard. He actually hasn't used his name in decades. Let me ponder for a moment, he says with a weird accent. The woman is surprised that he has a southern accent. He sits in silence as he rummages around in his memory. Then he remembers someone familiar, with a warm smile. I remember, he finally exclaims. He takes a deep breath, finding a fragment of himself he'd misplaced. My name is Li Jian. A doctor has now come in to assess Jian. So Li Jian, age unknown, address unknown, and he has memory issues? The doctor asks. He declares that it's going to be a problem. The woman doesn't look happy to hear this. Fast forward 3 months later, she's now in a police station. They've searched high and low, even among older folks, but can't find a match for his identity. Not even the faintest fingerprint trail. They couldn't find him on CCTV either. The woman has heard all this before and just wants to know how they intend to handle the issue. They've never seen a situation like this before. There's a high chance he might be an undocumented alien. The woman only wants answers. The officer smiles awkwardly, saying that having a guardian would make things easier. A guardian. The woman mulls over the idea carefully. Then, a lightbulb moment. A guardian! Back at the hospital, someone's calling out for Li Jian's guardian. Jian sneaks a sideward glance. He nudges the woman. Isn't she calling ya? She approaches the counter grudgingly. She signs the form which gives her guardianship over Jian. She pauses, then turns to look at him. Their eyes meet for a second. Does she feel some kind of connection with him? Rizu and Jayan leave the hospital. Jayan stares at Rizu and asks why she's looking a bit blue. She stares for a second, and deflects, insisting again that it was the rock's fault, and he shouldn't feel indebted to her. Jayan asks why she keeps repeating stuff like that. Rizu can't answer, but instead steps closer. She tells him that she put his age as 24 in his documents. The younger the better, right? With a threatening glare, she says that she's older than him, at 34. But did she just say that younger was better? Jayan counters. Rizu stares at him darkly, cursing him in her mind. Anyway, Rizu reminds him to speak formally to her because she's older. Jayan answers, okay, whatever. She reminds him again to speak to her respectfully because she's way older than him. Jayan comes back with an absolutely deadpan face, because he's literally a 3.5 billion years old now. Finally, they move on, with Rizu offering him a job until his memory somehow returns. She suddenly stops. Jayan has taken her hand and is holding it. What the heck? She yells, swatting his hand away. She scolds him about taking someone's hand without permission. Why not? He asks innocently. Rizu's had it up to here with this ridiculousness. She desperately runs through the basics of obtaining consent. Once done, Jayan straightforwardly asks, "Can I hold your hand?" She's not entirely sure how she's ended up in this spot. "Say it politely," she requests. "May I please hold your hand?" Jayan asks. Rizu takes his hand. "Come on." She pulls him. He stares at it for a moment. Suddenly, there's a crackle, and there's a vague memory of a child and his mom in a field of flowers. There's an emotional rush, and before he knows it, he's crying. Tears quietly roll down his cheek. Rizu is taken aback, asking why on earth he's crying. Jayan himself seems confused. "I don't have a clue why," Jayan admits. Meanwhile, in a few steps away from them, a planter box of vibrant yellow daisies were glowing brightly. The same kinds that were growing in the field he used to walk through with his mom. The scene kicks off at Cafe Chabduin. It's sunset, and the place looks cozy. Rizu and her friend are in a deep convo about Jayan, who looks out of place as he listens. Rizu's sipping her drink, while her friend skeptically asks, "Is that who you're staying with?" "Yep, Jayan's with them, at least for now." The friend shoots a look, which Jayan immediately clocks. "Don't cut your eyes at me," Jayan says, which gets Rizu all confused. Things get awkward. The two friends step outside, where a cute corgi's tied up on a leash. The girls argue over Jayan's living situation. "He's staying at my place, not yours," says Rizu, defending her decision. Her friend just thinks it's weird. "This dude's unidentified, he has amnesia, and his accent is strange," the friend insists. Rizu's not buying it. "What's wrong with his accent?" she asks, raising an eyebrow. Her friend's adamant. Her mom's from Gyeongsang province, and she knows a fake accent when she hears one. It's like he's imitating it. They mull over why Jayan's here and why he might be imitating an accent. Either way, this makes no sense. Her friend argues with concern. "He's a random guy. How can you let him stay with you? Have you lost your mind?" Her friend scolds. Her friend's not wrong, but Rizu feels conflicted. She remembers how she met him. They both stare at Jayan, still seated inside. Jayan, trying to compose himself, offers a faint grin. The friend gasps at the sight. Rizu mentions feeling partly responsible for Jayan's predicament now. Also, she has a good eye for people. "What's your read on him?" asks her friend. "Somehow he seems harmless," replies Rizu. Both women eye each other, tentatively assessing Jayan's intentions. Her friend exhales, half amused and half defeated by Rizu's stubbornness. A plan forms. Since there's an open room on the rooftop above the cafe, the friend suggests Jayan can camp there. The two women present this idea. Jayan isn't thrilled. "I want to stay with you," he says, a bit direct. "Say it politely," the friend says. Jayan tries again, only to be answered. "I don't want that." By Rizu. Jayan looks glum but resigned. Rizu warns Jayan not to follow her around. He's supposed to live here and work to earn money until he gets his memory back. Jayan looks even more glum. "I'll visit often," Rizu reassures, bringing a small comfort to Jayan. Still looking sad, Jayan gives a little nod. Turning to her friend, Rizu tells her to watch over Jayan. Her friend's confused. "Leaving already?" Rizu has errands to run, especially with her work at the IU. Jayan's curious about it. "It's a place called International Environment United. They do good work," explains the friend. "Then I want to work there too," Jayan thinks to himself. "Royce," Rizu calls out to the corgi. She untying Royce's leash when the corgi suddenly dashes off. As a peculiar moment unfolds, Rizu's puzzled over Royce's fondness for Jayan. Usually, Royce doesn't like anyone. Jian looks down at Royce. Rizu will be taking Royce home. He thinks Royce is a very lucky pup, and gives him a tender pat. Boom, a strange energy zips through the air as Jian touches the dog. The world seems to shift. His eyes widen. Then he bends over as if to throw up. His eyes shift to the road. A random truck screeches onto the scene, adding chaos to the already tense vibes. Royce also starts barking defiantly, sensing something's off with the truck. Rizu tries to calm the corgi as the truck drives past. Jian stares at the vehicle. That car, he murmurs. Rizu notices it's an IU truck. What about it? Rizu wonders. Royce is still growling at the truck intensely. A dog's nose is insane compared to ours. Like thousands of times sharper. Jian didn't mean to use the dog's powers when he touched it, but he did, and he sensed a peculiar creature. There's something inside that big, bulky truck that even Jian had never encountered before. Some crazy organism born out of human innovation. Jian, despite his lost memories, was able to sense it. Rizu and her friend exchange uneasy looks. The signs that creature was producing were way too intense to ignore. Whatever's in there is bad news, filled with a sense of deep hatred for humanity and all of its existence. Inside a research facility, folks are discussing a hydra. This hydra contains malignant genes that cause cancer. In a lab, they're studying this strange creature. It can regenerate itself completely from just a tiny fragment. Scientists are digging into this ability for chemotherapy research. One of the men pulls up more slides. In one experiment, they cut off one of its tentacles, and it regenerates like new a few days after. They're also studying how to suppress regeneration of the tentacle. It may help them find a way to suppress cancer cells. The men in suits look very interested. The discussion veers into marine discoveries. They were able to obtain a new hydra species for study. Its differences intrigue the researchers. Take a look at its structure. The lab coat guy continues, flicking to the next slide. They've given this new hydra a name, Steer. To understand this creature better, we need to understand this. The Earth was designed to operate in harmony. From the tiniest plankton to humans, life on Earth is born with its own instincts. Like a newborn getting milk from its mother, or a chick breaking out of its shell. These instincts are inside each creature, and are geared for survival. All creatures on Earth are part of this system of life and death. This cycle sustains the harmony of the Earth. Take the plankton, for example. Plankton are the basic food supply for many creatures and play an important role in cloud formation. Water evaporated from the ocean is condensed into small particles because of plankton. These condensed droplets form clouds. These clouds then reflect light back to the atmosphere, preventing Earth from overheating. In that way, the ocean produces half of the oxygen on Earth. It regulates the climate and gives life to all living beings in this world. The ocean is no different from a life support system. And yet, it is being destroyed by humans. Back in the cafe, Jian asks Rizu where she's headed. She's off to church. Let's go too, he tells the cafe owner. She answers grumpily that his shift isn't over yet. But there weren't any customer right now, Jian reasons. Did he want to get fired? The owner asks. Besides, the owner reveals that she's Buddhist. Jian doesn't know what that means. Rizu wonders if maybe Jian was religious before he lost his memories. Jian doesn't know what religious means. Do you believe in God? Asks the owner, but Jian isn't sure. Is he an atheist then? The owner asks further. It's someone who thinks there is no such thing as God, Rizu clarifies. He gives it some thought. He is sure that there is God. You're sure? Both girls chime in. The world is too perfectly crafted for anything else, he replies. Rizu and the coworker watch him, puzzled by his sudden clarity. Despite his fuzzy memories, Jian feels ancient roots in this world, a deeper connection somehow. The world was just too perfect. He wasn't going to stand by and watch as the Earth's perfect harmony was destroyed. Typhoons, hurricanes, earthquakes, and other natural disasters. Maybe they weren't enough. And so, a critical being was born into existence in order to maintain the balance. Its instincts are innate and geared for survival. Kill all humans. There are now two creatures on this Earth that have the same goal. One's trapped in a lab. The other? He has lost himself. These organisms, practically mirror images of purpose and survival, are destined to meet. Their meeting is inevitable. What's gonna go down when they finally come face to face? It's the million-dollar question, only time will tell. Back at the cafe, Li Jian stares into a steaming coffee. He smiles at it serenely, unaware of what is to come. The day kicks off at the cafe. Dawoon is annoyed at the mess she finds. Really, Jian? She groans, taking in the chaos around her. Jian, lost in a daze, doesn't respond right away. Dawoon won't let up, pressing for some kind of reaction as she tells him to start cleaning. Jayan finally nods, responding with a simple yes, as Dawoon enforces a bit of order, directing the cleaning brigade to sort the boxes. Curiosity gets the better of him when he wonders aloud about the excessive amount of boxes. "You're asking this now?" Dawoon snaps back, revealing they're all just forgotten books from when the place used to be a book cafe. She even offers him a chance to explore them if he gets bored. Thinking out loud, Dawoon contemplates the mop of hair Jayan's sporting. "Geez, let's get you a haircut," she says, pinpointing the mop top as a problem. Jayan gives a nonchalant okay, before his eyes wander over to a collection of books titled Incredible Creatures. But hold up, it's Jayan's first day, and Dawoon clues him in on some basics of welcoming and serving. She makes an example out of a straightforward transaction, iced Americano and change calculation. After teaching him to serve the coffee, Dawoon appraises his performance. Jayan asks for feedback, earning himself a generous 90 points from Dawoon, with a note to up his friendliness a notch. "Can you smile a bit? That'll seal a perfect score," she suggests playfully. Jayan listens, trying to understand how it all works. A ding of the door signals customers, catching the attention of everyone inside the cafe. As the customers walk in, Jayan takes a deep breath and gives them his most charming smile. "Welcome to Cafe Cha Dawoon!" He unexpectedly captures some hearts with his boy-next-door charm and mysterious aura, sparking some animated reactions from the new customers. It's evening and Riz is taking a run around the area. She passes by the cafe, and is surprised that it was busier than normal. She takes off her earbuds and takes in the scene. Jayan's like a star, serving coffee, but getting plenty of adoring looks from the customer. His smile is so bright it seems like he's shimmering. "What's happening?" Riz thinks. Closing time brings celebration. Dawoon is ecstatic, treating Jayan as her good luck charm. Jayan, sporting a weary but genuine smile, reflects on the day's events. Dawoon, on the other hand, insists they've struck gold with Jayan's charm basically packing the cafe. Riz smiles. She's happy that things worked out for Jayan. Dawoon asks Rizu what she was doing here. She thought Rizu was super busy. Oh, Rizu just wanted to check how Jayan was doing. No worries here, Jayan is an expert at adjusting. That's great news. Rizu asks Dawoon if she'd like to have a drink. It's been a while. Dawoon declines. She has a date tonight. Never mind then, Rizu says. I'm good. Jayan suddenly speaks up. He doesn't have any plans. Both girls stare at him awkwardly. It's later in the night. They're now at a bar. Looks like the place is packed tonight. Jayan, caught off guard by the energy, spaces out as Riza questions his absent-mindedness. Riza asks what he'd like to drink. He has never had an alcoholic drink before. Riza tells him he probably has, he just forgot. Riza offers to make him one. She holds out a glass of cold beer. Here, try it, she says. Jayan takes a curious sip. Riza smiles as he too grimaces at the bitterness. Next, Riza chugs down her own glass. Yeah, that's it, she exclaims, savoring each drop. Jayan's not sold, wondering aloud about the odd joy folks find in these drinks. Rizu explains that it's to get drunk. But Jayan stays puzzled, asking the necessary question, what really happens when you get drunk? Rizu smiles, about to open a window into her world. Well, this might just be me, she muses. Rizu, looking thoughtful, says, the world's so cold. If I'm going to survive in this cold world, I need to become cold too, she declares, raising her glass. Jayan listens, still nursing his drink like a kid not sure how to hold it properly. But to be honest, I'm not cold. Rizu backtracks and takes another gulp. Jayan's eyes drift as he takes in her words, quietly sipping his beer. Then, Jayan asks what happens when one gets drunk. He's dead serious. Rizu teases, sipping again, her eyes twinkling with playful mischief. I become crazier, she laughs, daring him. You'll see the real me. Jayan ponders these words. He's listening intently, looking at his beer. Who is the real me? He wonders. Okay, they're now done drinking and are walking home. They meander through the moonlit streets and Riz's energy is infectious. Yeah, I'm feeling great. She cheers, while Jayan, slightly wobbly, spouts gibberish. Soon it's time they part ways. Jayan offers a genuine gesture, insisting he walks her home because it's dangerous at night. She counters with sarcasm, poking fun at his old-school chivalry. Turns out, he's picked up some manners from one of the books in the boxes upstairs. The night wraps them in its quiet, and off they stroll, steps echoing in perfect harmony. Then surprise! A field of glowing fireflies. Riz is astonished. They're both entranced, swept into a serene, magical moment. Whoa, fireflies! She whispers, never having seen them before. Jayan agrees, finding them incredibly pretty. The glow seems to reflect right back in his eyes. Jian asks if she likes them. Yeah, they're pretty, she replies, simply appreciating the beauty. Jian's lost in thought, staring at the little creatures. Suddenly, Jian's eyes widen. Was it a memory perhaps? He reaches out his hand. Riz's jaw starts to drop as she sees a glow. The surprise quickly turns to terror. The fireflies have all gathered around him, and he's glowing from head to foot. Jian chuckles innocently, as if discovering a whole new facet of himself. What about now? He laughs. Do you like me when I'm like this? I'm pretty too, right? He laughs, echoing the words of his mother from a lifetime ago. Rizu, wide-eyed and frozen, struggles to comprehend what she's witnessing. Jian, with his goofy smile and otherworldly powers, freaks her out. Her scream pierces the night. Jian, looking puzzled, asks, Huh? What's up? Rizu bolts like she's seen a ghost. Jian could only muster a faint. Oh. Realizing that he had freaked her out. He calls after her. Don't follow me! She yells, trying to put distance between her and Jian. But wait! Jian calls out, warning Rizu to look ahead. But it's too late, she's heading straight for the edge. She trips on the barrier and falls over. Jian's eyes widen, seeing her go over. Rizu's mind races. Am I going to die? As the ground disappears beneath her. Then, a flashback, cheetahs darting across a book page, comes to Jian's mind, and he sprints into action. Time seems to slow, and just as she's about to hit the ground. But then, her eyes widen. She sees Jian leap over the edge after her, eyes glowing blue. There's a moment of electrifying eye contact, and then Jian swoops down, grabbing her out of thin air. In a miraculous move, he pulls off the catch of the century, landing smoothly and holding Rizu securely. Both of them are wide-eyed and breathless. Jian lets out a sigh of relief, muttering about how scary that was. You okay? He asks. But Rizu's still in shock and not quite believing what just happened. The scene changes. Now we're at the IU, an advanced research facility where everyone's poring over scientific wonderments. They're talking about something called steer, a specimen with incredible regenerative powers. Rizu listens, but looks exhausted. One of the scientists poses a mind bender. Are these copies the same creature or a whole new deal? The lead scientist's like, good question, and shows a bottle of sulfuric acid that causes distress in the creature, but doesn't harm steer. Everyone's intrigued. It's all mystery on top of mystery with these experiments, like where's this going? Even Riz is there, looking weary but incredulous. The other samples have started to tremble and struggle, as if also feeling the effects of the acid too. Back to basics, they wonder if these new entities are independent, or still part of the same creature. They still don't have an answer for that yet. Riz is amazed. They're not connected by nerves. How is it possible? The head scientist smiles serenely. It's a complete mystery. Rizu, freaked out by the implications, is getting all introspective, raising more questions than answers. Later in the day, Rizu speaks with the lab head. He asks her if she's still drunk from yesterday. Someone began to glow? Like fireflies? Rizu laughs awkwardly. But what if there was, hypothetically, someone who did that? Rizu presses on. The lab head replies that if indeed there was someone who had these kinds of powers, they wouldn't be human. They would be a research subject. Rizu ponders his reply. Back in the cafe world, we're at Dawoon's place. It's night again, with the same sense of quiet. Rizu, looking worn out, returns to the cafe where Jian is back to his usual duties, wiping glasses with a hint of melancholy. He spots her standing outside. He waves at her happily. The cafe's closed for the night, so they have a chat. Turns out Dawoon's out on another date. Rizu doesn't know how to begin the conversation. She gets a bit intense, bringing up what happened yesterday. Jian, with a blank stare. She presses on, trying to make him remember how he lit up like a beacon. He admits something vague, like, "Oh, that. I can be anything I want, but I don't know why." It's clearly cool, but also quite unnerving. He throws in a, "Cool, right?" But Riz is not sold. Still, he reassures her he won't do anything she doesn't want him to. Rizu, not missing a beat, pushes further. If he can be anything, what else could he do? Jian stands there, looking all thoughtful and a bit distracted, like he's lost in his own head. Meanwhile, Riz is staring at him, clearly trying to piece something together. What's she thinking? Suspicion, maybe? Questions flying through her mind. Suddenly, a flash of memory from his childhood comes back to him. Jian snaps back, murmuring something soft. "Oh," he says, as if he just realized something big. The next second, his eyes light up with this eerie glow. He's got this chilling smile as he drops a bombshell. Bring humanity to extinction? Man, that's one heck of a twist. Riz's face goes pale. She's frozen, like she's trying to process whether she's supposed to be terrified or just massively confused. It's clear she wasn't expecting to hear that today. Riza stares at Jayan, her expression a mix of curiosity and disbelief. Meanwhile, Jayan stands there, his eyes literally glowing with that weird blue power again. But it suddenly disappears and he's clearly confused. Jayan blurts out, "What did I just say?" and scratches his head, trying to remember. Riza repeats it hesitantly. "Bring humanity to extinction." Jayan's reaction? He's like, "Seriously? That didn't sound like me." He might not know why he said it, but Rizu is definitely curious. She's like, "You're weird," throwing in a casual insult for good measure. But Jayan, being Jayan, just nods along, assuring her that she's not wrong. Then, Riza slams the counter with determination. "Exactly! Let's figure this out together." It's a bold statement, and Jayan seems at a loss for words. Just stunned silence. A while later, Riza drops a consent form in front of Jayan, explaining, "I need your consent to study you." Underneath her facade, there's serious intrigue about Jayan's abilities. "The research won't be dangerous," she reassures, but leaves the decision entirely up to him. After a moment's hesitation, Jayan signs it without a fuss. Rizu, triumphant, smiles as she checks his signature. Jayan casually wonders what else Rizu wants him to do, almost too compliant. Rizu doesn't give much away, just smiling knowingly. The next day, someone strides back into the cafe, enter Dawoon. Her energy is the complete opposite of Jayan's drained appearance. She gasps dramatically, playing up her concern. "My poor Jayan! Where did your smile go? Why do you look like death?" she cries. Jayan's response is muted, exhaustion marks his face. Last night, Riza did her tests. There was a blood test. She made him drink some stuff and put a tube down his throat. "I had some things to take care of last night," he replies evasively. Dawoon's puzzled, but doesn't prod further. Later that night, Riza's in her apartment. She thinks she's getting too old. She feels so tired. Riza later contemplates to herself about everything Jayan said. How could he say such a heavy thing so nonchalantly? Bring humanity to extinction. Something must have happened to him before he lost his memories, Riza ponders. She stares at a photo on the shelf. It's of her and a younger boy. Her brother maybe? The next day at the IU, they're running tests on Jayan's blood, hoping for answers. A colleague confirms. "He's an ordinary man." The words hang hollow with unintentional irony. "That's it. He's just human," Rizu repeats incredulously. The results? Not what anyone expected. She thanks the lab dude and leaves. Back in the hallway, Riza still holds that vial, deep in contemplation. Every test the same. Nothing extraordinary revealed. The uncertainty of Jayan being just human leaves her more puzzled than ever. She remembers Jayan glowing, and his speed when he saved her from the fall. As Riza walks away, her face scrunched with frustration over all she's yet to understand. Common sense is crumbling. Her mind's a storm of unresolved questions and invisible dots she can't connect just yet. Absent-mindedly, she walks past the lab where Steer was being experimented on. As she walks past, a tentacle starts to twitch. A lab tech notices it. Steer starts to writhe and pulsate. It's quivering like it wants out. The lab tech yelps in shock as the canister launches itself off the table and falls to the floor. A look of sheer panic is etched across the faces of the lab techs. As if on cue, there's a loud shatter as the container smashes on the floor. Then, almost instantly, it's like a jolt of electricity hits Jayan. He's at the cafe now, all jittery at the table. People around him look up, curious. This feeling sends shivers down his spine. He doesn't know why, but something's happening. Suddenly, there's this massive surge of energy back at the lab. The sinister entity from before is now exploding, a swirling mass of chaos and destruction, and those scientists have no idea what's hit them. Dawoon notices Jayan's discomfort. Jayan, with an intense, almost otherworldly look, doesn't seem fully present. "What's wrong, Jayan?" Dawoon asks. But his mind was already elsewhere. Meanwhile, chaos erupts at the lab. A scientist frantically yells at his colleague, who's messing up big time. "What do you think you're doing?" The poor guy stammers, apologizing as the strange, tentacled orb before them starts to react. Sweat drips down their faces as panic sets in. "Bring me another tank, now!" the boss demands. One scientist scrambles to comply, shouting back. "Yes, sir!" The orb continues its menacing advance, not giving them a moment's rest. Desperation in his voice, shouting, "Hurry! Get it now!" The lab head winces, expecting an attack. But wait, it just reaches out a tentacle and wraps around his finger. The lab head is surprised as the Hydra shrivels up and dies. The head scientist watches with disbelief as the orb's lifeless. "It died," he murmurs, sweat beading on his brow. A lineup of identical orbs and tanks catches his gaze, each appearing unaffected by their comrade's demise. The original body died. His thoughts voice it bluntly. But those remaining show no signs of concern. A sudden, uncomfortable pulse runs up the scientist's hand. He's horrified, staring at the crimson arcs dancing across his skin like electricity. It gets worse. The assistant standing beside him reacts with shock, the tension palpable in the room. The scientist convulses. His assistant, helpless, blurts, "Sir?" assumes the worst as he watches foam bubble from the scientist's mouth. Riz is just outside when she hears the scream. She bursts into the room asking what's happening. "We need help!" rings out with urgency. They need an ambulance. The lab head is unconscious on the floor and foaming at the mouth. Riz fumbles for her phone, intent on dialing out. She still has the vial of Giant's blood with her. Suddenly, the lab head's eyes glow red, and he rises from the ground unnaturally. Riz is still on the phone when something stops her. The lab head, eyes glowing malevolently, zooms to attack her. He's almost got Riz within his reach. But just in time, Giant arrives, plowing forcefully into the scientist, smashing his glasses. All eyes lock on Giant as he intervenes with purpose, disarming the situation in one powerful move. Realizing Giant's presence, Rizu is taken aback by the intensity of his entrance. He slams the body to the ground, knocking him unconscious. "Lee Giant? How did you?" comes out in a shaky voice from the startled Rizu. Giant, focused yet alert, checks on Rizu. "You okay? Are you hurt?" His protective instincts kicking in. The lab head's finger twitches for a moment, and slumps down. The assistant wonders who this guy is. He glances down at his hand. Looks like he'd been scratched during the attack. "Guess he scratched me earlier," he ponders. Giant's looking at him suspiciously, making the assistant wonder why. Outside, the ambulances have gathered. The lab head is loaded up on the ambulance to be brought to the nearest hospital. Riza confronts Giant again as they prepare to leave, curious about how he knew where she was. Quietly, he admits he doesn't know, something just drew him there. "Let's get out of here," Giant suddenly says. He glances at the lab assistant again. As the ambulance makes its way to the hospital, the body of the lab head lying unconscious suddenly fidgets. "This place is too dangerous," he tells Rizu. The lab assistant nonchalantly walks away, but not without displaying a little twitch himself. "Hey! Lee Giant?" Rizu calls out desperately. Giant grabs her hand and starts walking away. "What in the world are you doing?" Rizu demands. Clearly frustrated, she yells after them. "I said let go!" and forcefully breaks free from Giant's grip. She spins on him, eyes blazing. "What's wrong with you? What's so dangerous?" she asks, confused and angry. Giant, taken aback, tries to find the words. "It's hard to explain with words, but it really is dangerous," he mumbles, looking dead serious. "I don't have a good feeling about this place." He tries to explain while Riza looks on. Giant pleads, "Can't you trust me just this once?" A tense pause lingers in the air as Riza thinks it over. Cut to a peaceful drive. The sun is setting over a highway. Rizu is in the car, apologizing over the phone for bailing on her commitments, pretending to feel unwell. She hangs up, clearly troubled. Giant, grateful, softly thanks her, "Thank you." A silent moment passes between them. As they cruise, Rizu hands over some test results to Giant. They chat about his health, how the results show he's normal, except for one thing. His senses were off the charts sharp. They were inhuman. Then Rizu drops a bombshell. "Do you like me?" Giant doesn't skip a beat. "Yeah. I like you." "Then, what about other people?" Rizu asks. Giant's nonchalant. "I don't really care about them." But Rizu counters. "No, you hate other people." We cruise over to the hospital, where the head lab scientist is confined. A frenzied scene unfolds as he bites the hand of a doctor in a crazed fit. The scientist backs off, wide-eyed, realizing what he's done. "Hey! What was that just now?" freaks out the bitten doctor. The doctor and hospital staff eye him warily as they leave the room. "I'm dipping in and out of consciousness," admits the bitten scientist. He recalls the doctor's words. He gets the all clear on his health, but questions linger. "Then why did I have a seizure?" he wonders. The doctor blames stress. The scientist examines his fingers, recalling the earlier mayhem. A certainty dawns on him. This was caused by the steer. He's stuck on a hospital bed but with an intestine-churning urge. He needs to get back to his lab. At the IU, life seems ordinary, but things are never as they appear, right? As the lab assistant, yes, the one that got scratched, nods off, a mosquito lands on him and makes him her next meal. He swats the mosquito away, but it flies off easily, humming its own threat in the silence. The story zips back to our duo now on a roadside. Rizu wonders, based on Jian's antisocial tendencies, if something bad happened to him before he lost his memories. It's okay, I hate humans too, she admits, but concedes that it's something they can fix with time. Jian, a little dazed, still in the dark. I don't know what you're talking about. Riz's curiosity peaks. There's one more thing I wanted to know. A question mark hangs heavy in the air. Eyes lock, and Rizu begins. Why do you like me? And with the sun setting behind them, that heavy question lingers. You hate other people. Riz's words echo in his mind. If he had to be honest with himself, she was right. Jian's lost in his thoughts. These people are kind of like him, yet so different. And he hates them. Riz's voice brings him back to the present. Why do you like me? She asks, but Jian only stares. He can't describe it either. But that moment quickly shifts to a whole new vibe. Jian asks if she really wanted him to do it. Riz gives an affirmative nod. They step out onto a pier, the water stretching endless before them. Jian raises a hand over the water with a confident twist. Riz's mixture of curiosity and thrill is evident as he conjures something extraordinary. Suddenly, the water around them is surrounded by hundreds of ocean creatures. They're doing exactly what Jian wants them to do. Jian's eyes light up as he focuses. The water swells around his feet. He raises his hand again, and a large bubble of water rises up from the ocean. Riz's face turns from surprise to absolute shock as the water, a monstrous, gorgeous fountain, erupts in a swirling dance. Jian's expression remains steady. But Riz is a mix between amazement and fear, trying to hold it together. Then, out of all places, Jian asks what's next. Ride the wave, maybe? Riz hesitates but, feeling bold, nods along. The sun's rays scatter on a dramatic seascape. On an old plank of wood, the two take off on the bubble, caught in a sweeping adventure. Jian tells her to relax even as she clings on, fear and excitement battling inside her. The reason you're scared is because you're trying to fight it, he says, and reassures her that he is by her side. Land, water, and wind. They have always been by our side. You just have to accept them and let yourself feel. Finally, Rizu accepts Jian's words and lets go of her worries. A tranquil yet blazing sunset wraps them in warmth. It's incredible, right? Rizu, eyes wide and alive, reflects on just how crazy awesome this is. She slowly lets go of Jian and reaches out a hand, tentatively at first. But then, she breaks out into a smile. They fly through the sky, pure euphoria written all over. Left with gentle nightfall, they settle on a deserted isle. Clouds offer them soft covers, but not cell phone signals. It's just them, the sky, and an endless sea. Rizu flops onto the sand, exhausted, exhilarated, things spinning wildly in her head. The night is theirs. A soft smile graces her fatigued features. In this candid moment, she murmurs a thank you to Jian. Jian, sitting beside her, questions the simplicity yet depth of her gratitude. For what? Rizu states. That was the best I've felt in my whole life. Jian responds with a gentle, almost understanding smile. At that exact moment, at the hospital in the city, the scientist is awake in bed, trying to understand what was happening inside him. These words echo in the air. I don't need any tests to sense it. He's caught up in a big revelation. Steer's original body isn't dead yet. This thing is living inside him, sharing his body like an unwanted guest. His face is contorted in concentration. 1. 5. 36. Now, there are even more, a whole mass of them. Turns out, countless people are somehow intertwined with him, and their numbers keep growing. His face is grim, burdened. He realizes this thing's cells will take control of others. And the original body inside him is gearing up to send out orders. At the moment, there's only one order. Expand! His eyes narrow sharply. Why is it sending that signal? Meanwhile, under a serene moonlit sky, Jian and Rizu sit by the beach. They talk about this devastating potential, like the havoc he could wreak on humanity. Rizu acknowledges Jian's dangerous power, calling him a living nuke. But then, Rizu insists she's his guardian, determined to keep his destructive side in check. She confesses she doesn't know his past, but feels it's her duty to be there. Her mission at the IU is to protect this beautiful world. Jian softens, a faint smile appearing. And if I protect you, he says, I'm protecting the world. There's a mutual gaze, full of trust, and a silent promise passes between them. No matter whether his memories return, Jian won't destroy the world she cherishes. This brings a quiet smile to Riz's face. Jian, more resolved now, vows, this I promise. But something interrupts him. The word expand throbs with malevolence. Yet Jian's voice is firm. I'll protect you. But those dark cells persist, whispering destruction. Destroy them all. The two sit quietly on the sand, their resolve unshakable as they face the still night together. We kick off the day at the IU. There's a buzz in the air, something's brewing. Two scientists are chatting in hushed tones. One mentions that someone doesn't want anybody going inside today. They're worried, seriously worried, because after a recent seizure, things have changed. Everything's just different with him now. The atmosphere is tense as they approach a door with "No entry" plastered across it. Inside, a man with glasses clicks away on his keyboard. His illuminated face is locked in intense concentration, surrounded by darkness except for the glow from the screen. The steer right now. No, he corrects himself. The humans right now are connected to him. He's dealing with 280,000 humans connected to him, scattered across the globe. He muses about how dangerous this situation is, weighing his limited options. There's a decision looming, a choice between two options A and B. His face hardens with resolve. Outside, the city hums with life. Crowds move like waves, and yet one hand reaches out seemingly alone among them, pondering why it had to be him. A newscast beams from above. The Green New Deal has passed, sparking controversy, and being called extreme environmentalism. Then, breaking news. It's reported that a vocal opponent of these changes, a prominent figure, was found dead, purportedly a suicide. In the shadows, the scientist ruminates quietly. In the country, a heated debate ensues over these radical environmental policies. The scientist takes shallow breaths. Then, more deaths, a chairman of a global oil company. Also a suspected suicide. In another part of the world, the party vehemently opposed to the Green Deal suddenly reverses and announces its support. The scientist's eyes widen with realization. I was chosen to bring about a better world. His fist is clenched as he experiences this come-to-Jesus moment. Suddenly, a creak. I found it, says a voice. Suddenly, a mysterious figure lands with practiced ease, confronting the scientist. It's Jian. It's you, isn't it? The one acting strange? He asks emotionlessly. The man with glasses demands to know his identity, incredulity lining his voice. Li Jian, he replies with a calm confidence. Things suddenly get real. A twitch, a shaking realization hits the man hard. Pain and chaotic energy burst forth, he screams into the void, and he slumps down, glasses clinking to the ground forgotten. You found me. A voice surfaces within. There's a daunting aura engulfing the room as the man faces his inevitable question, what next? Li Jian thinks about this question for a moment. He goes back to another moment, at the cafe with Riz earlier today. He snatches something in the air. Riz is not impressed. Why'd he do that? Jian stares at the mosquito in his hand. Now it's back to reality. I think. His words hanging in stale air. I'll kill you, he declares simply, without emotion. Their bond is palpable, these two entities sensing and measuring one another. Steer asks why Jian was trying to stop him. He may have taken human form now, but they were born with the same goal. Jian's response is clipped direct. You're a threat to Rizu, and I'm going to protect her. Power surges around him with raw intent. Jian's eyes burn bright, water crackling with energy. The man feels the weight, the threat to his own grand plans. Flashback vibes kick in. The creature remembers how it was suppressing itself back then because they didn't have enough power. Cut to now, and it's clear that things have changed big time. He clenches his fist. Jian's got this sharp, focused look, eyes that catch everything. Noise erupts from the door. Thuds and thumps echo. Something's crashing its way toward him. The door bursts open with force. Bodies rush in like a tidal wave. Zombies? No, it's something else. They swarm, charging without fear. Jian's on high alert. Hands reach for him, intent clear in their movements. What could make every single person around turn like this? The other guy, he's calm, like it's all under control. He whispers that every single human can become his weapon. Then Jian moves. It's fast. He dodges with precision, taking the charge head-on. And when he locks eyes with the threat, he asks, You sure? Confidence shines through those glowing eyes. Jian's already in motion, spinning the creature around. He's a blur of energy, focused, unwavering. He smashes through obstacles with sheer force. And sends the enemy crashing through the window and out into the open. I'm sorry to break this to y'all, he says in his hillbilly twang. But my weapon is Mother Nature. As the creature called Steer is flying through the air, thrown by Jian, the controlled humans close in on Jian. But in a flash, he's off. He jumps after Steer. And the two make eye contact. Jian grabs the guy mid-fall. Then, they're rocketing skyward, a streak of blue fire in the sky. It's as if the world stands still for just a moment. The serene sky quickly becomes a battleground again as the two crash land into a mountain with an earth-shattering thud. The impact is too much for Steer as he coughs out blood. Jian stands over him, calm and unyielding. His expression is unreadable. Jian's foe struggles, trying to catch his breath. Jian tells him he intended to kill him, but why is he not dying? The sound of someone being beaten up echo throughout the forest. A series of brutal strikes follow, each one more decisive than the last. Jian readies his fist again, electricity crackling around it like a storm. His punch lands with a resounding thwack, and his opponent finally crumples to the ground. Jian surveys the scene curiously. Despite the odds, Steer claws his way back up, trembling and gasping for air. But his injuries quickly disappear as he miraculously heals himself. Why won't this thing just die? Jian is exasperated, his patience wearing thin. Face to face again, a wordless challenge dances between them. He grabs the creature by the neck, and asks him what he has to do to kill him? Suddenly, his foe clutches his arm. Steer tries to invade him, but it doesn't work. What kind of power is this? Steer asks the silent question in his mind as he struggles to comprehend the strength of this relentless kid. His body is just like a bowl that holds nature in it. But Steer is different. He can control everything. He lifts a hand, and insects stirred by some force beyond comprehensible join the fray. He lifts another hand. Suddenly, it's chaos. The ground shakes as a stampede of wild animals charge in. He can control everything and reign over them, Steer declares in his mind. But Jian's unfazed. With a crack, the ground gives way beneath him, leaving room only for panic. Jian's opponent is launched skyward once more. The animals on the ground begin shrieking in confusion as the ground rumbles underneath them. While Steer is in midair, Jian braces himself. His opponent knows it's trouble. Anger mixed with fear radiates from his face. With another burst of energy, Jian rockets upward. Much to the creature's surprise, Jian closes in like a flash. Then, with a final, decisive thwack, he strikes a serious blow, leaving a gaping hole in Steer's midsection. This sends him hurtling down, leaving streaks of blood to mark his trajectory. Jian glances backward. Is the fight over? His opponent falls to the ground, torn between his limits and instincts. He lands with a thud, while Jian calmly touches the ground, evaluating his battered rival. Looks like Steer is in over his head. Jian stoically declares, "You done?" while flicking blood off his hand. Exhaustion carving lines in his face, Steer feels overwhelmed, admitting he's no match for Jian. How is he supposed to fight this monster? Steer thinks, while breathing heavily, struggling and drenched in sweat. Then, an idea comes to mind. He remembers the woman Jian came to save at the lab. He turns his head down for a moment, and erupts in laughter. His eyes glow ominously as he lies on the ground, defiant even in pain. He's finally figured out what or who Jian's weakness was. He chuckles to himself a bit more. You'd think that after getting smashed into the ground, Steer would have quit, but no, he's still got something to say. What a shame, he gasps, and somehow, it feels like he's not quite done. Jian standing over him silently. Steer compliments him, of all things, calling him interesting. Yeah, he admits to going about things the wrong way, and you're thinking, what's Steer got up his sleeve? Steer admits he wants the easy way out. As if things couldn't get creepier, his eyes start glowing. Then, there's this loud cawing from a crow, amping up the tension. Jian is all, "What's this?" All the birds fly towards them. He doesn't fall for it. Lame distraction, he says. But it wasn't him they were aiming for. They fly past him and attack Steer. Suddenly, a glowing red light fills the area. And then Jian's ready for round 2, muttering under his breath about that sneaky tactic. But he's shocked at what's before him. The scientist is on the ground trembling, looking worse than a crushed bug on a sidewalk. The crows flutter away into the golden sky. He moved, Jian realizes. This whole deal is getting a bit more annoying than he'd like to admit. Then there's a cough from the scientist. He's finally himself again, and seems ready to spill his last request. He's struggling to say something important about a computer and a folder. Jian's all, "Sorry, I'm busy," and bolts from the scene. The scientist is barely holding on, still mumbling about his computer and a folder, before taking his last breath. Meanwhile, the crows make their way back to the city. At the cafe, Rizu wonders why business is so slow. Dawoon grumbles it's because Jian doesn't show up at work lately. Dawoon feels stuck, unable to fire Jian despite the no-show routine. Rizu hesitates, possibly unsure or hiding something. She's questioned if it's because of something between her and Jian. Rizu brushes it off nervously, but there's more to this exchange than meets the eye. Suddenly, Dawoon's hand shoots out, unbidden, grabbing Rizu's mouth. Dawoon's hand was acting totally on its own. What kind of ghost shenanigans is this? She doesn't even understand it herself and blurts out a shocked explanation. Pain stabs through her head, almost like something's invading her mind. Rizu watches, worried, asking if she's okay, But Dawoon is hit with a realization. Run away, she urges Rizu. But too late, Dawoon is shaking, things are about to get a whole lot worse. Just then, Rizu hears a thud. A bunch of people with glowing red eyes are banging against the glass. Suddenly, the glass shatters and the wild-eyed people burst in. Rizu is utterly swamped by the chaos. What the heck? Have they all gone mad? Panic shoots through her mind, trying to make sense of the madness. Dawoon's overtaken by whatever is possessing them, reaching out with mindless aggression. Rizu tries to back away, tension skyrocketing in this dangerous game. Just then, Jain swoops in, the one blue beacon in the madness. He hops over the sea of frenzied faces. He grabs Dawoon and smashes her to the counter, apologizing that he had to do this. But Dawoon's not herself anymore. Rizu screams Dawoon's name, as tension mounts in the cafe. Jain steps up, promising Rizu that this is the last time. The cafe scene is wild, people with eerie eyes are everywhere, turning the place into chaos central. Jain charges into action, throwing Dawoon toward the crowd, while apologizing again. Rizu still looks rattled, watching Jain handle things in disbelief. His eyes flash with determination. This is Jain's show, and he's not going down easily. Meanwhile, breaking news flashes on TV screens. The world is losing it, people everywhere are showing these bizarre neural symptoms. The government's on high alert, investigating this as a potential new infectious disease. It's like a sci-fi movie come to life. A report comes in. The symptoms are all the same. They're seeing a girl's face in their mind, like a video. It's a girl with long dark hair. The message that comes with the video is creepy and direct, scratch her. Outside the cafe, hands are reaching, grasping, clawing for Dawoon and Jain. And then, another chilling command, bite her. It's getting out of hand. The authorities are scrambling, trying to pin down what's causing this chaos, but answers are thin. The disease, or whatever this madness is spreading like wildfire. It's everywhere. The broadcast warns everyone to be careful. Meanwhile, a crow with glowing eyes watches everything unfold with malevolent eyes. The news is all over this outbreak. The anchor describes the freaky symptoms. The fingers are the first to get affected. And at some point, a person loses control of their entire body. And now the world's calling it the wave. We switch to a pair of kids doing a live stream. The dude introduces his friend. They think he's got the wave. He lifts up his hand to show the audience. It's fine at first, but then, it twitches, almost as if on cue. The dude stares into the camera, unable to contain his excitement. He's like, "How's that feel?" But the guy is all confused, feels like someone else is controlling him. They assure the viewers they're not faking it. Suddenly, the guy starts moving weirdly, like he's possessed or something. His buddy freaks out when he goes for the window and opens it. He drops down like a stone. "Minwo!" the dude screams, but it's too late. The chaos unfolds outside leaves him shocked. People with glowing red eyes are running rampant. They look crazed, screaming with wild abandon. Rizu is caught in this madness, her expression a mix of terror and determination. Jain is trying to keep the attackers at bay, knocking one possessed dude out cold with serious intensity. His eyes blaze with an odd, supernatural light. Clarity hits him. It's not a random attack, they're after Rizu specifically. He clenches his fist. If that's the case, it leaves him with no choice. But Rizu takes a hold of his hand, which surprises him. She signals him. No. Jain thinks of other options, as the monsters closes in. A while later, they sprint through the city, with Rizu on Jain's back, and the monsters hot at their heels. They're surrounded on all sides now. Jain urges her to hold on tight, as he leaps from the ground and lands on the nearest rooftop. They're safe, for now. Finally, catching their breath, Jain explains what's been happening. Rizu's mind races. This is all because of the steer inside the researcher. Jain admits he ended up killing the researcher. He had no other choice. Just look at them, Jain remarks. She snaps, disbelief and frustration boiling over. How could he just kill someone and be so indifferent about it? Her emotions clash fiercely with Jain's stoic composure. She looks away in frustration, knowing she won't be getting an answer. With grim resolve, Rizu decides they must find clues about the steer at the IU. Rizu firmly decides they need to go back. Jain's all, "Oh, okay." Like it's no big deal. He grasps Rizu's hand, and offers to carry her, but Rizu swats him away, clearly not in the mood. "What's wrong?" he asks, kind of lost. Her face shows a mix of emotions. She starts to talk but then hesitates. She finally blurts out, "I can't understand you." Jain looks puzzled. Rizu turns away, struggling with something inside. She decides to go alone, leaving Jain to wonder what just happened. Suddenly, a memory crackles in Jain's mind. Words echo. "To protect you." and a memory or a feeling of safety. Riza strides towards a door, but the banging has started. Then, wham! Everything bursts open. A dude with glowing red eyes lunges at her, full of rage. Riza sees it coming, but she's caught off guard. The guy screams in a beastly roar, the kind that chills your spine. Jain's quick, takes the guy down like a wrecking ball. "You can't understand me?" Jain says quietly. He admits, "It's simple. The most important thing to me is you." Chaos intensifies as more people with those eerie eyes spill onto the rooftop. "Anyone who tries to hurt you is going to end up dead," he declares. One guy even chomps down on Jain. Riza screams his name, desperate. Suddenly, Jain's eyes flare electric blue, power swirling around him. Channeling the power of an electric eel, he zaps the mob away like they're nothing. He locks eyes with Rizu. "I will protect you." She's stunned, realizing just how deep his commitment goes. Way up on another rooftop, a figure watches from afar. It's the dude from earlier, and he's filming the whole thing, broadcasting it live. The guy can't believe what he's just seen. "OMG, did you guys see that?" he gasps. The chat blows up with comments. "Is this real? A movie? What the heck is happening?" The video goes viral, racking up views like crazy. The scene kicks off with a bunch of people in a boardroom, all in a swirl of confusion and tension. One of them starts to break the ice, mentioning something about muscle issues as if it's the latest viral trend. The boss at the head of the table isn't amused, snapping back, looking for concrete answers. "So?" he demands, wanting an explanation for these bizarre symptoms that nobody's seen before. The boss temper flares, banging the table in frustration. He's got no time for this. "You still haven't figured this out? Seriously?" The timid one apologizes, probably wishing he could just vanish. They've been searching for the infamous patient Zero since the crack of dawn. They're desperate and just asking for more time. But the big man in charge is skeptical. What are they gonna tell the public if they keep stalling? Suddenly, someone bursts in, panting. "Sir!" As if the place is on fire. The man at the table isn't impressed. He's in the middle of a crisis, not a coffee break. "What is it now?" he roars, fury in his eyes. The newcomer looks nervous but insists this is something important. He shows something on his tablet. The boss's expression shifts from anger to shock. It's the live video of Li Jian letting loose his electric eel power and electrocuting a bunch of infected humans. Meanwhile, on the building rooftop, Jian's got this electric force field thing going, zapping anyone who gets too close. It's insane. It's like he's at the center of a sci-fi showdown. Jian reflects how all this fighting seems pointless. They're not just people, they're controlled by something bigger and badder. He scans his surroundings. Suddenly, he spots it, a crow watching with eerie red eyes, a little too keen on Jian. He doesn't hesitate. There's a swish and a slam as he bolts into action. "You must be comfortable all the way over there," Jian thinks, as he swings a piece of rubble with all his might. It's go time. He sends the rock zooming, a blue streak across the skyline, and boom, it hits the crow in the distance. At that moment, the zombies seem to weaken, flopping to the ground. Was he able to kill Steer? He's on edge. Looks like it's not over yet. Riz is now sitting slump against the floor, as the infected humans gear up for another wave. Nearby, the crow flies away unharmed. A guttural growl erupts as more attackers come into view. Riz yells, "Giant! Behind you!" She's terrified. He slides his hand over Riz's. His focus is unshakable. "I'm sorry," he says. Giant reassures her. "I know you don't like it, but surviving comes first. Let me protect you, okay?" She nods, hanging on to hope. He hoists Rizu, preparing for an escape from this horror show. A hand swipes, trying to grab them as they dart off. Giant's got her. Hold on tight. There's no other choice but to trust him. They're racing away over buildings, leaping into the sky like protagonists in a wild fairy tale. Meanwhile, the dude at the other building is still live streaming the whole thing. This disbelief goes viral. Clips get shared faster than you can say zombie apocalypse. The boardroom guys can't believe their eyes. Is this CGI? A film gone viral? One of the texts stutters out. Real-time footage. Reality has gone off script. The boss can't believe it. The video's spreading faster than wildfire. The whole nation is tuned in, watching from billboards, trains, offices, and schools. In a military building somewhere in the city, a general watches, thinking they're dealing with some kind of monster. John takes off in a flash, sprinting through the streets with Rizzo on his back. The city blurs around them as they zip past buildings, his focus razor sharp. Rizzo holds on tight, eyes wide with uncertainty but trusting John to lead them to safety. They screech to a halt, barely avoiding a makeshift barricade. Whoa! Rizzo breathes, still clinging to John. In front of them is a wild bunch of crows with glowing red eyes. Jian, sweat on his brow, mutters, "There really is no end to this." His mind races. How long can they keep running? Suddenly, he senses something. Inky feathers start raining down around them. The crows start dropping dead to the ground. A chill hits him like a lightning bolt. "But how?" he whispers, feeling a strange dread seep into his bones. Rizu, catching the edge of panic in his voice, asks, "What's wrong?" She's trying to stay calm. Then, the reveal, a tear in her sleeve, stained with fresh blood. How is that even possible? When did it happen? These thoughts rush through Jian's mind, as he tries not to let the panic overtake him. The scene opens at the National Intelligence Service, where a report is being made about the ominous wave spreading from the IU facility. Turns out, IU has been meddling with some dangerous stuff, specifically a rare hydra species called steer. "Steer?" echoes the boss curiously. Someone hands over a set of crucial files, suggesting they might provide some answers. A USB drive exchanges hands. The boss plugs in the drive and takes a look at the folder named A. We shift gears to the city, where there's a rampage of infected humans, eyes glowing with eerie red light. Suddenly, the crowd snaps back to normalcy. Did someone hit the off switch on crazy mode? Dawoon was among them. There's chattering and murmuring, as the crowd wonder what just happened to them. Rizu wonders if they're all back to normal. What happened to them, all of a sudden? Jian doesn't answer, but just stares at the crow lying dead on the ground. He glances at the wound on Riz's arm. It's because they accomplished their mission. They head over to a nearby rooftop, Rizu trying to clarify the current situation. Steer was able to invade her through the cut. But it wasn't a poison though. Rizu wonders if stopping the blood flow will stop it. Jian's expression tightens. No way blocking is the solution. They've got one drastic option left. What is it? Riz asks. We could chop it off. Jian tells her, his aura crackling. Absolutely not. Riz counters, matching his intensity. But urgency demands action, no time for a second guess. Give your arm? No way. Jian's getting a yes to that. Back at the NIS, the boss reads through the researcher's notes in shock. He reads about how the original steer body bit the researcher and died. About how the researcher lost consciousness, but later checked the CCTV and found that he tried to bite another researcher, Rizu. The researcher has a feeling steer was the cause of it. He writes about fading in and out of consciousness as he scratches and bites everyone around him. Somehow, a moment of clarity breaks through. He's able to suppress it if he focuses hard. The next entry is a few days later. The researcher has found traces of steer's cells in his body. Steer isn't really dead, it's living inside of him like a parasite. The researcher documents that he can sense all of steer's duplicates connected to him, and he can feel them increasing in number. A few more days later, and the researcher has learned how to control these duplicates, both human and animal. But he's not even sure now if he's still in control of himself or steer controlling him. He's not able to distinguish between it yet. Another entry, a few more days later. The researcher reflects on why they started working for the IU. Their mission was always about making a change, trying to create a better world. At the rate of environmental destruction happening now, humanity is headed for extinction. He writes about why something like steer happened, and why he was chosen. He's got a plan. He thinks he can actually change the world with these powers. He can create a better world. The sun rises, shining over the hills. It's a new day with new challenges waiting. Meanwhile, in a racing car, Riz is in deep thought. If whatever's infecting the cells has spread, cutting off the arm doesn't seem like it's worth it. But she seems confident. Don't worry, we'll figure this out, the IU's got our backs. There's a quiet determination in the air. Now we return back to the researcher's journal. He writes that if anyone was reading it, that means that he failed, and they must destroy Steer. Steer's power is enough to wipe humanity off the map. The only way to dismantle this threat is a bit more twisted, though. It involves killing the host. The intelligence agency boss heaves a sigh of relief, thinking that this solution was quite simple, not knowing who Rizu had on her side. At the IU, things are tense. Rizu and Jian pull up, confused by what they see. Soldiers everywhere. Riz is like, "What?" As they get closer. They're stopped, entries prohibited. The soldiers asking what they're doing. Rizu introduces herself, part of the research team, trying to keep things calm. She insists she needs to get inside today. Meanwhile, far off, the National Intelligence boss is getting an update about a woman claiming infection with Steer's original cells. The man from the video was also with her. Back at the gates of the IU, Rizu and Jian are stuck, wondering why they can't go in. An official approaches, directing Rizu away. She hesitates, wanting to check something at the lab first. The man seriously suggests that they cooperate right now. Then, Rizu is pulled away. Jian yells that there are more urgent things to deal with right now. Suddenly, the vibe shifts. Soldiers start moving fast. Guns clinking. Come quietly, they're told. Or what? Jian glares, which sends a cold chill down the man's back. Jian's not having it. I don't want to, he says. Panic ensues. The order's given, everyone ready your arms. All weapons are now pointed at Jian. The official asks one more time for their cooperation. Jian's eyes are full of something almost unnatural, and the soldiers are sweating. Suddenly, a memory surfaces of men with guns. Quietly, Jian mutters, "Get rid of those things." And he clenches his fist. The dude's pushing back hard, threatening to shoot if they don't surrender. But Jian's not backing down. He's ready to fight. Rizu reaches for him, trying to pull Jian back from the edge of whatever transformation is brewing. Jian looks back at her. She shakes her head, signaling for him to back down. Jian relaxes slightly, the tension easing. Both are surrounded. The guy directing the soldiers is relieved, wiping sweat but still on edge. They lead Rizu away. Jian looks concerned. Rizu gives Jian's hand a squeeze, as if reassuring him that things are going to be okay. Night envelopes the IEU, silence falls on the complex. Rizu finds herself cuffed, but now knowing why. They calmly explain. Their precautions because of the steer infection. Meanwhile, they're getting ready for something ominous. Riz's defiance doesn't waver as they begin whatever's planned. Jian's been brought to another facility. He's alone in a room, contemplating. He's locked up too, fiddling with handcuffs. Suddenly, he hears the sound of a door opening. A soldier enters. There's tension aplenty in that brief interaction. She introduces herself as Kim Seon-yeon, head of the Defense Department. Jian's lost, like, what is this place? Kim mentions the video of him is all over the internet, challenging him to explain what happened. Jian shrugs. He has no clue what she's talking about, but he wants to know about Rizu. Kim doesn't answer, but continues her interrogation. Her father worked for the National Security Agency in the past. He passed away when she was young. This doesn't interest Jian. He only wants to know where Rizu is. Kim goes on ahead, telling him that she read her father's journal entries after he passed away. He wrote about a mysterious existence, and ran around the country investigating it. She talks about a monster, but is suddenly interrupted by a knock. Someone steps in, another announcement. Riz's test results are in, and her tests have come back positive. Jian reacts to this news. We've discovered how to eradicate steer once and for all, Kim tells him. He's like, really? There's hope? And the answer isn't sugar-coated. Yeah, there's a solution, but it's dark. Get rid of the host of steer's original body. And boom, the bomb drops. They've got to eliminate Rizu. Jian shatters the cuffs that have been holding him. Kim rises, looming over him with unsettling authority. What did you say? Jian asks emotionlessly. Her life will be given to save the world, Kim replies. What a line. But Jian isn't buying it. He smashes into the glass like a madman. His eyes are burning with resolve, but that glass is bulletproof. Kim smirks, but Jian tells her, You think I can't get through this? Completely ignoring him, she pulls out a picture of the monster her father was hunting. It seems impossible considering Jian's appearance now, but he does look like the one in the photo. Kim turns the photo towards Jian with a smirk. The chills hit hard. It was a photo of him and his mother, holding his hand. Memories come pouring in. Why do you always fight? To protect you. His mother's voice echoes in his heart. The photo opens the floodgates and all memories of his mother come pouring back. The moment of his birth, and the day she died. His face hardens, but he can't mask the welling emotions. The soldier sees it all, in that silent, eerie air between them. Jian's tears say what words can't. Under the soft glow of city lights, tension fills the night sky. In his office, the president is urged to sign a critical document. It's an emergency order from the head of defense, declaring a state of emergency to stop the spread of a rare disease. The stakes? Capturing and eliminating Rizu, linked to the viral steer. A heavy question lingers. You want to kill that researcher? Is there really no other way? The president seems desperate for alternatives. A straightforward reply. No, sir. Silence broods. They don't yet comprehend the steer's potential, so they need to eliminate the threat as soon as possible. The aide understands the president's hesitation. But when weighing one life against humanity, can there even be a comparison? The president's finger hovers over the order document. It's a small sacrifice, he murmurs, battling with his conscience. Mr. President. His aide presses. The resolve forms. I understand. Words can't fix this, he muses, as he stamps the paper with finality. At the IU, corridors echo with footsteps. "He just approved the order," says a suited official with a resigned nod. A flicker of regret appears. Okay. He expected this to happen. But it's a shame. A military building looms in stark night contrast. Inside, Kim looks at Jaehyun, confused. Jaehyun, haunted by memories, tears flowing down, as he stares at the photo. "Why are you suddenly crying?" she asks. It's a link to his past, a tether to his childhood with his mother. He remembers walking with his mother through the flower fields. He remembers his mother stepping in to save him. And mostly, he remembers his mother's dying words. Finally, he takes a deep breath. "I just remembered," he murmurs. "Why you humans have to die?" His shadowed gaze hardens, lines blurring between past pain and present fury. The reaction is swift. His demeanor shifts, striking unease into the soldier once more. Jaehyun stands resilient, reflecting on a past encounter with the people who killed his mom. "So you're the daughter of someone who died back then?" A realization piercing the quiet tension. Jaehyun's objectivity honed sharper than glass. "Did you bring me here to avenge them?" Kim replies that she was too young, and she can't even remember her father's face. She's only concerned about the safety and security of the country. "No, I don't care about your reason. I want that photograph," he demands, untethering his focus. "If you let me have it, you won't have to die right now," he tells her seriously. "What if I refuse?" Challenges arise from the soldier. Without a word, Jaehyun raises his arm and points it at the wall, unleashing a ball of force that explodes through the building. Jaehyun unfurls a calculated calmness. "Don't take it personally." The chief looks stunned. Jaehyun explains that if she really was the daughter of one of those men, he feels guilty for her loss. She rebukes him. His feelings don't compare to hers, as a daughter who grew up without a father. Jaehyun pauses. "How many lives do you think it will take to kill just one human?" he asks. The chief isn't sure about his question. He lost so many of his kind to humans. He suffered and died 1,000 times. And he lost his entire world to her father. His sentimentality dismissed, he questions the expectation of emotion from those who fuel his rage. Fear is starting to creep into Kim, as she swallows nervously. Finally, she relents, and hands the picture to Jaehyun. "Good thinking," he prompts, acknowledging logic over sentimental tethering. Jaehyun stands amidst shattered glass, eyes blazing with intensity as he clutches the photograph. The room's tension is palpable, as the chief across watches him intently. Sweat beads on her forehead, a mix of fear and anticipation. "Are you going to Arizu?" she questions, trying to mask her anxiety. He doesn't need to answer aloud. His silence speaks volumes. The soldier's face is set in grim determination. "It's just one more death to add to the tally," he mutters, almost as if convincing himself. Images of Riza flash in Jaehyun's mind. It doesn't matter anymore. With shadows enveloping him, Jaehyun prepares to take on the world, his presence both intimidating and captivating. Jaehyun's strike has blown a hole through the side of the building. Soldiers stare at it, their faces a mix of fear and disbelief. Jaehyun slowly steps out, crunching over debris in unsettling silence. Blood pools around the fallen soldiers as Jaehyun walks past without a glance. Someone gasps, spotting him in the hall. Jaehyun closes the distance, unflinching, his eyes glowing. An officer yells out for General Kim, urgency in his voice. Inside the room, Kim stands at the desk trying to seem calm, but her trembling hands betray her. She issues an ominous command. She's issuing Operation Jindo Dog immediately. A subordinate voices concern. There are 2 Jindo Dogs already. Kim raises the alert to 1 Jindo Dog, the maximum alert level. Meanwhile, back at the IU, tension mounts. Rizu's brought in, the room tense as the gravity of her situation sinks in. "Do I really have to die?" she asks with a shaky voice. The cold reply is like a punch. The president approved it. They plan to proceed immediately, no time for argument. Rizu, still cuffed, tries to argue. She hasn't given up yet. But they cut her argument short with harsh reality. It's the whole world against her. Her struggles seem pointless now. Panic flutters within her, but the decision is out of her hands. Riza asks how they plan to kill her. By euthanasia, they call it. A gentle sleep, they promise. But the room feels colder. Rizu, processing her fate, remains in silent. It's now early morning and Dawoon dashes through the quiet streets. Her breasts are ragged, determination etched on her face. In the distance, a familiar figure stands. It's Jaehyun. Relief floods her face. "I found him!" she exclaims. Running towards him, she shouts out his name, the weight of the moment hitting hard. She's looking for Rizu, as she hasn't answered her phone all night. Just then, the ground rumbles and tanks move in. The soldiers are everywhere, mobilizing quickly, guns raised. Even a helicopter swoops in, engines roaring above. Jayan and Dawoon stand together, confusion and fear blending in their eyes. He glances at Dawoon, remembering happier times. Back at the lab, the man's eyes widen in shock, as Rizu, eyes glowing red, grabs the syringe and stabs him in the neck. "What are you doing?" he yells. Rizu looks lost, with one eye normal and the other glowing red. Jayan, sensing this shift, turns away. He feels, "This is too much for me," echo through his thoughts. Outside, orders fly. "Fire!" The streets rock with booming blasts. Dawoon screams, but Jayan is unbothered by the violence around. "It's too much." The thought runs through his mind again, as he remembers his time with Dawoon. But that's long gone. Only grim determination remains on Jayan's face. Then, a flashback of the general telling him they have to kill her. Next, a memory of Riza smiling back at him. Just then, an explosion rocks the streets, a fierce kaboom that halts everything momentarily. "Halt! Stop firing!" The command echoes. They wait for the smoke to clear, and they're shocked. Jayan's eyes pierce through the haze, determined and relentless. A soldier breathes out the words every mind echoes. "He's a monster!" Jayan stands amidst the chaos, a towering block next to him, shielding him from the barrage of attacks. He remembers the general's words. "We have to deal with the host of the steer's original body. We have to kill her." Jayan reflects. "This is too much for me." Memories of Rizu and Dawoon run through his mind. Questions linger in the air. Is it because they look alike? His stance, lost in thought, seems to affirm his doubts. But yet, he knows Rizu is different, not his mom. But why does he care so much? The soldiers are visibly shaken, they can't believe what they just saw. Jayan is standing in front of them, not a scratch on him, with Dawoon hiding behind the slab. Suddenly, Jayan calls Cha Dawoon. She, startled, clutches her face, tears streaming down. Jayan suggests, "Let's go see Rizu." Dawoon's still in shock and can't say anything. "Why aren't you saying anything? Are you hurt?" he asks, trying to reach out to her. But Dawoon recoils in fear. She cowers on the ground, too scared to move. The military presence inches closer, anxiety tinged with sweat. Jayan takes a quiet breath, surveying the situation. He speaks to Dawoon. "These people want to kill Rizu so they can save more human lives." He asks her what she thinks. Is it the right thing to do? She's too overwhelmed to process his words. Her fear is palpable. It leaves no room for rational thought. Commands echo again among the soldiers, preparing for an offensive stance. They're ready, or so they think. Jayan intercepts their intentions by snatching the commander's radio, silencing him mid-command. Suddenly, Jayan is among them, his presence demanding attention. The commander is immobilized in his grip, a futile struggle. Dawoon, peeking out from her hiding, sees his defiance. "These humans talk of a sacrifice for the greater good," he speaks. But he believes sacrifices should be done voluntarily, not forced upon by others. "In the end, all you're justifying is the strong eating the weak," he says. "The bigger and stronger ones stomp over the rights of the weak. The decisions are always made by the strong ones." But he's already made his decision on this one, he says, as he surrounds himself with power. He squeezes the man's face until it bursts open in a bloody spray. His fist, stained with reminders of past altercations. He's used to all of this. He's already taken so many lives. There's a dark acceptance there. But the time he's done, there won't be a single human left in this world. His decision is final now, it's set in blood. Dawoon, terrified, crouches low. But why did he want to save her so much? Why did he want to go see her? Amidst all this, Dawoon breaks, her soul shrieking. The sight of Dawoon crying brings up many forgotten feelings. These feelings are dangerous. He has to get rid of them. Around him, shadows loom large, like specters of past deeds. Jayan's mind races. He's gotta focus, get his head straight. With a powerful swoosh, something slices through the chaos. Blood sprays, a shocking, visceral reminder of reality. Boom! An explosion erupts, shaking the city to its core. Destruction unfolds, leaving chaos in its wake. Cha Dawoon is there, caught in the blast's aftermath, eyes wide and fearful. Jayan's silhouette stands firm against the fiery backdrop, lost in contemplation. The sky roars with the sound of choppers as chaos unfolds below. Reporters in the helicopter can't believe their eyes. The city's under attack, and it's worse than anything they've imagined. On the ground, soldiers are being taken out by an enigmatic figure, one who's mercilessly mowing them down. It's brutal, and they stand no chance. The government's scrambling, declaring the highest-level national alert. "What in the world?" someone mutters as they catch a glimpse of the monstrous scene. Standing there, haunting the battlefield, is Jayan, with his eyes glowing eerily. Down below, the devastation is real. lifeless soldiers scattered on the ground. One of them fires desperately, bullets spraying around but seemingly ineffective. Meanwhile, the figure advances unaffected, bullets bouncing off his cloak like they're nothing. He's learned everything about humans, including the way they think. Flashes of human cruelty pass through his mind: hunters, poachers, slaughterhouses. It all blends together, kindling a simmering rage. He raises his hand, glowing with power, and delivers a devastating blow. The blast is cataclysmic, reshaping the landscape. The world trembles, and soldiers scatter, caught in the brutal aftermath. Jian thinks his hatred for human arrogance burns is still the same. The helicopter reporters are shaken, desperately broadcasting the madness, as if anyone can stop what's coming. Picking up a rock, Jian nonchalantly pitches it in the air, straight towards it. The cameraman drops his equipment, eyes wide with terror, as the rock zooms towards the chopper, taking it down. Jian stands unmoved, reflecting on his complex relation with humanity. Debris from the chopper is everywhere, and one is heading straight for Dawoon. She stares helplessly at the coming object. Jian shields her, metal debris crashing on him. Despite his hatred for humans, however, he's also learned so much about humanity, about emotion. He remembers all the people who have shown him love and compassion. Behind him, a lone soldier gets up. He's wounded, but he tries to muster his last strength, shooting at Jian in a futile attempt to stop him. Bullets hit Jian but bounce off, his body unaffected. He turns to the source of the gunfire. They lock eyes for a moment. The surviving soldier's eyes are wide with horror and exhaustion. With a final glow in his eyes, Jian stands and moves to finish him. But Dawoon grabs his hand. She pleads, trembling in fear, saying she's terrified. Jian's so conflicted, struggling with his feelings, but Dawoon clings on. In the end, he decides that he can't ignore her pleas. The cityscape around him is a battlefield, but Jian stares up at the sky in contemplation. His conversation with the general runs through his mind again, reminding him of the threat to Riz's life. He realizes that this is probably what his mom felt at that moment. A vision of Riz's smiling face flashes through his mind. Right at that moment, the only thought on Jian's mind is to protect Riz at all costs. And he didn't care at all if the whole world burned down doing it. Back at the IU, where everything seems calm. But inside, chaos is brewing. Riz stumbles out the doorway, struggling with something powerful. Her eyes are glowing, she's clearly not herself. She's surrounded by people, their eyes glowing like hers. Something's gone wrong. She clutches her head, pain and confusion etched on her face. In a control room, someone identifies Rizu on the monitors. They realize she's been overtaken by the steer. She's not in control anymore. Panic sets in, and they switch to Plan B, eliminate Rizu. Things escalate quickly, and everyone moves into action. Orders are concise and chilling. Kill her on sight. Rizu finds herself on her knees as a group of scientists charge past her, also controlled by the steer. Her head throbs painfully, and she grits her teeth, trying to fight it off. She gasps, realizing that she can feel every single being infected by steer. It's overpowering. Within her, the steer moves. Riza feels it, an uncomfortable presence inside her body. As she regains some composure, she sees the infected humans attack the security agents. Riza lifts her head, determination flashing in her eyes. She slams her head into the ground, an attempt to regain control. The impact startles those around her, making them flinch. And they fall to the ground like rag dolls. The security agents are stunned. I stopped them, Riza whispers to herself, realizing her brief moment of control. Suddenly, a strange voice echoes in her mind. Look here, human! Riza looks up in surprise. The voice questions her understanding, pointing out the stark reality. They're trying to kill her, and yet, it is trying to save her. It asks why she was stopping it from saving her. Determined, she tells the invasive presence to shut up. Steer doesn't relent, reminding her they have a symbiotic relationship. She fights back, calling it a parasite, full of fury. Riza smashes her head down again. On the floor, she breathes heavily. An item, her lifeline or nemesis, appears in the foreground, a gun. Riza gulps, fear and resolve battling within her. She remembers the stakes, her life versus the whole of humanity. And the suit apologizing because there was no other choice. Hand trembling, Riza slowly crawls toward the gun. Human! What are you trying to do? Steer calls. But she ignores him as she picks up the gun and points it towards her. She terrified and shaking, but she knows that she has to do this. Are you out of your mind? Stop it! Steer screams in her head. The moment reaches its apex. Riza squeezes her eyes, ready to pull the trigger. Suddenly, an intervention. A hand grabs hers and the gunshot echoes harmlessly. Jian's there, solid and unyielding. What are you doing? He questions. Pain and confusion, Tears and silence come forth as Riza clings to the only certainty she feels. Her heartache spills over as the tears flow, and comfort seems an eternity away. Another voice interrupts. "What are you doing? She was doing the right thing," the suit exclaims. "Her existence is a threat to the world now. She needs to die." Giant confronts this rhetoric, so they were the reason Riza decided to end it. He grabs her by the hair and tells her not to make a big deal out of it. He asks Rizu a question. Her existence, who does it threaten exactly? Rizu, with a bloodied forehead and determined eyes, stares back, wrestling with the weight of her reality. Did her existence threaten the forest animals? The fish in the ocean? Or birds in the sky? The answer is none of them. When this guy said that she was a threat to the entire world, he only meant humans. "You are not the one threatening the world," he tells Rizu. "It's humanity who is." Giant, with his calm presence, reassures Rizu with a simple touch. "It's okay," he tells her, with a confidence that seems to defy the chaos around them. "They can all die," he says. "None of this is your fault," grounding her in a reality beyond blame. Tension spikes as another character starts to shift, disbelief etched on his face. Suddenly, things go haywire, and a gun is drawn, pointed with a shaky hand. "This will save the world!" he yells, eyes wild and desperate. The moment is electric, eyes wide with panic. Even as death seems to chase her, Giant stands firm. "Even if everyone tries to kill you," the words echo with conviction. Blood spatters, a figure falls. "Even if you try to do it too," he continues. Turning back to Rizu, Giant solidifies his resolve. "I'm going to protect you," clear-eyed and unwavering in his promise. He makes her a promise. "You are going to survive," he concludes, leaving Rizu stunned and filled with a flicker of something she hasn't felt for a while: hope. Rizu stands in a rain of blood, shocked and haunted. Her mind races. "In order to save me, Giant killed a person." Her eyes widen, overwhelmed. An image of a vibrant scene over the water with Giant fills her thoughts, only to be shattered by more violence. Gunshots erupt. Giant moves decisively, dodging bullets like they're nothing. He raises his hand, ready to strike back. He lands a punishing blow to one of the gunmen, then another. His eyes glow cold and fierce. The attackers falter, unsure of their next move. Rizu watches speechless at the violence. Giant faces the enemy head-on, unloading punches like a machine. "Please just stop," Rizu cries out, desperation in her voice. Giant turns to her. "Please, Giant." Rizu's plea slices through the tension. There's a brief pause. Giant seems to sense her distress. He hesitates only for a moment, but decides to finish the job. Rizu's tears flow, helpless against the onslaught. His expression softens as he reaches out to her, a mixture of determination and something she can't quite place. His gaze is steady, full of complex emotions. Rizu bows her head, words stuck in her throat. A tender memory flashes, of a happy Giant, full of joy. She buries her face, overwhelmed by fear. Giant steps closer, his voice firm. "Those people were trying to kill you. I stopped them first. It's self-defense. It's justified." Rizu can't believe the resolve in his voice, whispers. "This isn't you. Who are you?" Giant spells it out. "I am Lee Giant." "No," she whispers, not willing to accept it. "No, you're not," she challenges fiercely. But Giant gazes back, undeterred. If Rizu judges people based on their values and actions, then he was not the person she thought he was. This is the real Lee Giant now. Rizu's face tightens with resolve. They stand amidst the carnage, silent but connected on some level. Giant continues, revealing that the only similarity he had with the Giant she thought she knew was that even if the world ends, he will protect Rizu. Rizu's eyes narrow, processing his promise. Giant's gaze shifts, aware that something was happening. Military footsteps echo outside. They now have the IU surrounded. Giant turns, warning her about what's next. He urges, "Let's go." But Rizu resists, slapping his hand away. His calm remains unshaken. Rizu gathers herself, defiant. "I'm going to die here!" she bursts out. Giant counters. "I told you you're not." She's adamant. This is her decision. The danger of the steer is real. Her eyes blaze with intensity, words hang between them. Giant's hand stiffens and a faint spark of energy glows in his eyes. Then, Rizu is enveloped in his mysterious blue glow. But then, he stops, and lets out a deep sigh. "I can't do this," he admits, shocking Rizu. A crazy idea flits past his thoughts. He thought about cutting off her arms and legs, and taking what's left with him. Rizu's confusion deepens, her eyes wide. "I can't bring myself to hurt you," he says plainly. Her heart catches in her throat, torn between hope and fear. Jin continues, earnest as ever. I can't stand you being hurt or sad. Her gaze softens, caught off guard by his heartfelt confession. He presses for raw honesty, searching her eyes. Do you really want to die? Is death truly her desire? Her silence speaks volumes. He leaves it hanging. Is that what you really want? Jin's eyes are cold as he reveals his life. He's lived for billions of years. He's tired of the seemingly endless life, bouncing from one existence to another. But he's never once thought of ending himself. There's this ingrained desire in all life, to survive and keep pushing forward. You're a liar, Jin says simply. You want to live. Her lips tighten as she grapples with this truth. We're hit with a flashback, Jin as a child, clinging to his mother who comforts her. Jin watches her, stone-faced. More memories flood in. Jin is sobbing, a raw and heart-wrenching moment. Jin reaches out with a plea. Please, I'm begging you. Desperate, he stresses that no matter what happens or what she does, he wants her to survive. In another glimpse of the past, these were the exact words Jin's mom told him before she left this life. I want you to survive. Rizu explodes with emotion, tears streaming down as she clings to him. The same way his mom took him in her arms, wrapping him in her embrace. He embraces Rizu and comforts her. Caught in a sea of chaos, Jin stands tall with Rizu clinging to him. The lifeless bodies are scattered around them like broken dolls, staining the floor deep red. They need to move fast as more enemies rush forward. Rizu's mind is a whirlwind of disbelief. Everything feels like one big lie. Just yesterday, everything seemed so ordinary. But now, they're thrust into this violent mess. Jin races forward and delivers blow after blow, a blur of fists and fury, while Rizu watches, her thoughts tinged with the smell of blood. Rizu, overwhelmed, tears streaming, questions her very existence. She's a threat, they say, destined to die. Jin's hand drips with the aftermath of battle, and Rizu, despite everything, knows the truth she's running from. With a silent communication, Jin and Rizu share an understanding. But Rizu's resolve, flickering and fragile, is tested as they scramble for answers in the professor's empty office. They suspect the government took everything. Silence grows between them, heavy and suffocating. Rizu's gaze sharpens as a vision of boots marching disrupts her thoughts. Military forces, relentless and numerous, close in. 1,119 people. Jin understands their grim predicament all too well. Outside, there's a sense of calm before the storm. Soldiers are rallied for the next assault. Warnings echo about the enemy's power. Jin, confirmed to have taken out thousands of people already. In the middle of the speech, something distracts them. The rooftop becomes their focus. The steer is on the rooftop, someone exclaims. Jin and Rizu stand against the sunset, a moment of peace amidst turmoil. Orders ring out below, targeting them with unyielding precision. Jin instructs Rizu to close her eyes, sensing the inevitable. Yet she hesitates, battling inner turmoil. The soldiers below are filled with uncertainty, as Jin launches himself off the building. He leaps into the fray, a blaze of blue light. Rizu squeezes her eyes shut, struggling with emotion, apologizing for what was to come. The scene explodes into chaos, sounds of pain and panic. Blood and dread saturate the ground, as cries for retreat tear through the air. It's overwhelming, but necessary. Their hands clasp tightly, a pact of survival, and a trail of blood in their wake. Surveying the destruction, they walk through the shadows of lost souls. The weight of their choice etched in every step. Behind closed doors, the political sphere is rattled. The stakes skyrocket as the president and general bicker over insane demands. Their existence is a dire threat to global peace, declares the general. The two of them are in the same position, the general gravely explains. But still, yells the president, slamming his hand. This is a city with civilians. Our soldiers are here. He declares with finality that they are never going to launch missiles. General Kim stands in defiant silence. She reasons that he already approved Rizu's execution, and insists this is the right decision, for the greater good. A gun is raised, it's a chilling defiance. The president is incredulous. General Kim, what are you? I've made my decision too, General Kim states, a solemn resolve in her eyes. The outcry is deafening, the final cry before action. A single gunshot reverberates, punctuating the chaos. As security burst into the room, they see the grim reality. Beads of sweat drip down their faces, as they survey the scene. The president is slumped, lifeless, blood painting a gruesome narrative. Guns are raised towards the general. They demand to know what happened. One guard spins around, eyes wide, desperately trying to make sense of the madness while under threat. General Kim steps into the picture, smug yet deliberate, breaking the news with a sinister edge. The president was infected. A murmur of disbelief shocks the room. What kind of BS is this? Spits out one of the guards, refusing to buy the story. Still, General Kim smirks, unbothered. Is that so? She responds coolly. Footsteps echo loudly in the hallway outside. The rustle of military boots reverberates as reinforcements march in. The security men realize they are outnumbered. Reality shifts hard and fast, as the true extent of the chaos becomes painfully clear. But that BS has now become reality, General Kim declares in an ominous voice. The scene opens with the echo of gunfire ringing through the air. Soldiers are firing relentlessly, taking out the two security guys without hesitation. The bodies slump to the ground, making way for the soldiers who have cleared a path. The general turns to shouts from outside. Let go of me! A man screams as he's being dragged in. He's suddenly confronted with the situation. President Kim Ji-byum is lifeless and ominous, staring blankly from his seat. The tension is thick. Welcome, Secretary General, a voice says, cold and inviting. The man doesn't hold back his disgust for the bloodshed. General Kim calls for the room to be cleared, demanding privacy. The Secretary General questions her sanity with accusations flying at her, but she stands firm, her face betraying no emotion. And then the bombshell drops. The president was infected with the steer, an insidious disease. I had no choice, she declares, her dedication to righteousness clear amid the chaos. The argument hits its peak. This is the Blue House. People won't accept this, screams the Secretary General, hoping to get through to her. General Kim isn't bothered. Other global powers have reportedly fallen victim, too. The tension is evident. The Secretary General stares at Kim grimly. So what you're saying is, you're going to take over the country with the military? He questions. Times have changed, he insists, pushing back against the madness. Have they really changed? General Kim questions calmly. She asks why thousands of soldiers can be killed by one monster, but they're not allowed to shoot even one missile. Even when they found the person who is causing the outbreak, they can't kill her because people complain about human rights. She tells the Secretary General that grovel and cater to the public to get their votes. But that only applies during times of peace. Democracy, freedom and equality are slow, she declares, raising her weapon. The Secretary General incredulously questions her if she planned on staging a coup and becoming a dictator of the country. Countless sacrifices were made to get where they are today. There's no way the people would accept something as ludicrous as that. But she's unfazed, almost eerily calm as she prepares to reshape the world as she sees fit. She praises her opponent's integrity, a final respect before announcing, Secretary General, you have been infected by the steer. The gunshot rings loud, a brutal reality. The man collapses, blood pooling beneath him. Silence reigns as the General Kim stares at the aftermath. A soldier enters nervously, shocked at the scene at the office. But the general turns to him without explanation, inquiring about Lee Jian and Arizu. They've apparently run away. The grim answer echoes. The general grits her teeth in annoyance, and starts firing shots at the body in front of her while shouting, Too slow! Totally not unhinged. Finally, her gun is empty, and the president's corpse slumps down to the ground. The president and Secretary General, now both casualties, are merely seen as collateral damage. General Kim orders the soldier to cover up the mess and keep everything secret. Make it seem like they were tested and came out positive for steer infection. A tentative salute seals the soldier's orders. The soldier asks what to do about Jane and Rizu. Do whatever it takes to track them down, the general commands. With the soldier gone, she turns and looks at the president's desk, her expression unreadable. She takes a few steps towards it, glancing over at the body on the floor. Slowly, she picks up her firearm and settles herself on the president's seat. As she contemplates her actions, a haunting memory crosses her mind. It is glioblastoma. Then, a flash of a brain scan. Yeah, it looks serious. Turns out, it's a malignant brain tumor. The general gets a grim diagnosis from the doc, who apologizes for the bad news. It was too late for any kind of treatment. A smile creeps up the general's lips. Then comes this eerie laughter echoing through the room. It's like she's delighted with how things are unfolding, even with a bloody mess around her. She leans back in the chair with a sigh. What a perfect retirement ceremony, the general whispers. I'm going to make history with you, and die a hero, she declares. Sounds ambitious or just downright insane. The scene shifts, showing a serene ocean, which is such a contrast to the carnage at the Blue House. Now, picture a breathtaking sunset. It's like the calm before another storm. Lee Jian and Arizu are standing on some rocky shore. They are facing this golden horizon, almost like waiting for something big. Finally, the sun sinks lower over the ocean, casting long shadows. The scene kicks off with ominous skies over the city, setting the vibe for what's about to go down. Cars zoom down the highway, their engines roaring like thunder, only adding to the tension in the air. Inside one of these cars, a soldier mentions they're getting close to the National Assembly. The big question on General Kim's mind, what about those two? They can't find Lee Jian and Riza despite all their surveillance tech. The general, deep in thought, just mutters a quiet, while staring at the rain hammering down. Meanwhile, in the middle of nowhere, Jian and Riza have taken shelter in a cave. Jian stares out into the downpour, his eyes intense and thoughtful. He breaks the silence, asking if Riz is hungry. He offers to grab some food, but a sudden click interrupts him. Riz has got a gun, aiming it straight at him. Jian doesn't even flinch. He tells her, "You can't kill me with that." Rizu admits he's right, but then raises the stakes. "What about this?" she asks, pointing the gun at herself. Jian lets out a frustrated sigh, saying he's getting tired of this. Doesn't Riza know that he can stop her? "After your memories returned," Riza speaks, "you took countless lives without hesitation. In the end, Riza could only watch as Jian killed and killed, because she wanted to live." She presses him, curious about his origins, and why he holds so much hatred for humanity. Jian reflects on this question. Why did he hate humans so much? "Because I know them so well," he replies. Riza is bewildered, and as Jian's words sink in, she still can't fully digest his history. Is there a truth to what he's saying? Why does it sound like a story half believed, yet so plausible? Jian continues, sharing that once he adored humans. Riza grows defensive, but Jian doesn't stop. He hints about many other species that have the same inclination, wondering whether something's just wired wrong in their minds. Riza yells at him not to come any closer. But Jian edges closer, and swiftly closes the distance, grabbing her wrist. Human warmth, he continues to explain, made the creatures feel happy, and he was always betrayed by that. Rizu, confused by his monologue, presents an expression of utter disbelief. Despite the doubt, Jian decides to let her in on everything. He genuinely wants her to make choices based on her own standards. As the rain continues to pour, Jane starts talking about himself. It all sounded like lies, but Riza believed everything Jian said. After telling her his story, he asks a question. "Are my actions wrong?" Riza could not answer him at all. Finally, the rain stops. Jian is looking up towards the sky. But suddenly, something seems different. "Oh, are you awake now?" he asks, as he turns towards a gleaming red eye. "The girl was the right decision," it simply declares. As long as Jian can't kill the girl, it is safe, right? Jian confirms it, and warns the steer to know its limits. The second it takes over Riz's body completely, Jian will eliminate it. The steer accepts, and an uneasy truce forms between them. The silence is broken with steer admitting it found Jian's past rather interesting, and hints at a shared purpose of ending humanity. Jian stares out, digesting its words. Steer, not backing down, pitches teamwork again. "Yep, it's serious. Its plan? Once humans are gone, it will vacate Riz's body." But Jian isn't buying it. He turns and calls its bluff. "Liar," he says. The steer is caught off guard, inwardly admitting Jian sees right through its acts. They exchange glances, a silent duel of wits. Jian asks why Steer's not saying anything. Was it really lying then? This catches Steer off guard, forcing it to blurt out that it was telling the truth. Jian fires back, asking if Steer will truly free Riza once they're done. Its response? A hesitant but firm yes. He challenges it. "You're not going to stoop to humanity's level by betraying people, are you?" It answers in a shaky voice. "I'm not." They stare at each other for a moment. Then suddenly, Jian turns around and walks away. Riz's eyes glisten, whether it's with anger, regret, or something else, who knows? But then Jian mutters, "In that case, let's do it." He steps outside, the dusk embracing both of them. The sun sets, a poetic backdrop to their dangerous resolution. Finally, Jian agrees. Let's bring about the extinction of humanity. Later that day, Riz's mind goes over to their conversation earlier that day. "Why do you hate humans so much?" he responds. "Because I know them so well. Hurting or killing people is plain wrong. Riza knows that without a doubt." But after hearing Jian's point of view, the moral lines blur, and Riza seriously questions everything. Rizu reflects that even as a dog, beaten to death by its owner, Jian lived a life full of love for his owner. He's lived through countless wounds and deaths. All of humanity's sins, he experienced them all. What if these things happened to her? Would she be as bitter and full of hate as Jian? Riza ponders things deeply, and finally speaks. "In your story, you have me and Dawon. There was the dedicated son who cared for his old mother. There was also his mother, who fought against the world for him." Jian's nonchalant. "So?" Gestures to a complexity beneath his quiet facade. Rizu elaborates. Among those countless lives that Jayan took, many of them were innocent people that had nothing to do with his suffering. And they had people who loved and cared for them, just like his mom. They stand at the edge, looking out into the distance. Though she can't judge him, she doesn't want to stand by and do nothing either. "You want me to survive, right? But I'm also a human," she declares. The two stand in silence for a long time. Rizu wishes they could escape to a deserted island, just like old times. She proposes that they find a deserted island where no one can come after them, where no one has to die, and there they can live their lives out together. Jayan stares at her awkwardly. "That's just like the proposals I've read about in books." He chuckles. "Exactly." Rizu says it with seriousness. Jayan's eyes go wide in surprise, but there's a growing trust between them. "You're going to do as I say, right?" Rizu asks. After a moment's thought, Jayan says yes. Night falls, and they settle down together. Jayan's still awake, contemplating this life they'd like to create away from everything. A life with Rizu in a place with no one else sounds so. The exact word doesn't come to mind, but an image of an idyllic life with Rizu. With the night sky as their canopy, Jayan whispers, "A life with you sounds nice," capturing a moment of peace amid the chaos of their world. Blushing a bit, Jayan looks down on the sleeping Rizu. But a piercing red gaze cuts through the shadows, jolting him from his reverie with a sharp command, "Wake up." He looks at the thing warily. Steer mentions it's never seen Jayan smile before. How disgusting. It reminds Jayan of their promise. The one about destroying all humanity. It presses further, practically whispering in his ear, hinting at dire consequences if he doesn't keep his word. Then Jayan, in that calm but deadly way, asks if Steer wants him to show the true meaning of disgust. His voice is low, yet it slices through the moment like a knife. Steer leans in closer, eyes questioning. And boom, the tension bursts with a kiss. It's like a scene out of a romance film, but we know this ain't that simple. Riz's eyes shoot wide open, totally caught off guard. Riz's hand involuntarily twitches. They're sitting together under the night sky like figures etched in stone. The kiss seems to last for an eternity. Steer, still bewildered by the raw impact, realizes something. What it always wanted from the beginning was this boy's body. Because no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't invade Jayan's body. But finally it sees an opening, an opportunity it's been longing for. Suddenly Steer grabs Jayan. It realizes that Jayan is stronger than anyone else in the entire world. And finally it has a chance to infect him. Darkness unfurls like a shadowy entity around them, glowing red. But Jayan's smirking like he's got the upper hand. Steer's eye widens in surprise. And it stumbles back. "What did you do?" It gasps, and you can feel the incredulous shock in its voice. Jayan, the calm ship in stormy waters, simply replies, "I purified your infected cells." Steer's face is mystified. It didn't see that coming. It hits hard. "Now do you understand? I can erase you from this earth if I want to. But why let me live?" Echoes the thought in the cavernous silence. She's staring at Jayan's hand, covered with red blotches like burns. But with a slight wave of his hand, it all disappears. "Of course I won't be safe," he declares. Rizu contemplates the unexpected twist amid the brewing mystery. Steer acknowledges his lust for life despite his lengthy existence. For a being as powerful as him, it's not worth it to risk his life for this girl. But it seems to understand. And here comes the million-dollar question. The extinction of humanity. When will you keep your promise? The air's charged as Steer's eyes stare into Jayan's guarded ones. Jayan turns away, casually advising not to rush the process. He wants to find a way to make sure Rizu is safe first, before he does anything. He tells Steer to wait until that day comes. As dawn breaks across the city, a new day comes with new uncertainties. Within the halls of power, soldiers guard the door, and almost half of the assembly lay dead in their seats. "We have a unanimous vote from the representatives who have not been infected by Steer," Kim announces from the stage. She will be the acting president of the country. Around the country, people are tuned into the live broadcast. Tens of thousands of civilians and military forces injured or dead. And the cause of it all has been two beings which modern science cannot explain. Rizu, the host of Steer, and Lee Jayan, a monster with unknown powers. Kim pledges to destroy these two mysterious entities, claiming it's them putting humanity on the brink. The words echo out to the crowd, promises to save the nation and save humanity. She ends her address introducing herself as Kim Seon-young, the acting president of Korea. We cut to a lonely road, where Jayan and Rizu walk through fields drenched in golden hues. Rizu leans on Jayan, both literally and emotionally, riding on his back. They press on, footsteps crunching against the dirt path. Jayan ponders how this life feels different, and maybe, just maybe, different in a way that's good. His hopes are caught between disbelief and yearning. In the end, I can't help but hope. His thoughts echo, the warmth of her presence wrapping around him like a lifeline. It's a kind of warmth he's never felt before, shaking his core. It's overwhelming, this connection they share, that he can't help but stubbornly hope. The sun rises over the horizon, casting a warm golden light on everything. It didn't take as long as last time, Rizu remarks. Rizu and Jian stand on a serene beach, taking in their surroundings. And the question hangs in the air. Where are we? Jian kneels in the sand, calmly tracing his finger along the beach, drawing a map. It's around here, he points. Riz's eyes flash with realization. This is North Korea. Jian confirms it with a simple nod. Yep, it is. Meanwhile, back at the president's office, there's tension. It's been 7 months with no word from Rizu or Jian, and the pressure is hitting hard. The man in a black suit is stressed out, no sign of them at all. But wait, there's more. President Kim is losing patience. What? She yells. Trouble's brewing with an international union. They're asking for accountability from them as the country who spread the steer. It's a mess, and the weight of it settles in heavy silence. President Kim lets out an exasperated sigh. They need to find them fast. Outside the Blue House, the locals are rebelling, chanting against a military dictatorship. Meanwhile, back at the beach, unbothered by it all, Rizu and Jian busy themselves with life on the remote island, bickering like an old couple. Too tight, she says, ordering Jian to do it again. Jian lets go of the hammock. I said untie it, not drop it, Rizu yells, and proceeds to scold him. The only things he knows how to do are killing people and stealing things. Ouch. Rizu can't help but jab at Jian's past, surprised the one managed to put up with him for so long. Rizu regrets trusting Jian so much and coming to this island. Jian narrows his eyes. It was Rizu's idea to come here though. Yet Rizu expects action, insisting Jian gets to work and scolding him some more. Attention builds, and Jian grits his teeth in frustration. But you just told me to stay put, he thinks to himself. Hold this, Rizu yells. Jian could only mumble a small okay, while Rizu grumbles. After a long day, they finally finish rigging up a hammock. Rizu, rewarding herself, flops onto it with delight. She muses about cold beer in the setting sun. Jian asks if she wanted him to get one for her. Rizu teases him about his past thievery, pointing to the other stuff he swiped. They don't even have electricity. Why'd he steal all that junk? Finally, Rizu concedes that a cold beer would be nice. Could he steal 2 bottles? Jian simply nods, and flies off into the distance. They settle into a mellow evening in front of a warm fire, clinking their beer bottles together. Rizu takes a few swigs of the beer and jokes about stealing from somewhere lower on the map next time. But the beer wouldn't be cold anymore by the time he got back, Jian replies. He's got a point, Rizu concedes. They talk about the next winter. The last one was horrible. Should they build a house or something? Rizu wonders. Jian suggests getting away to a sunnier spot when the cold hits. That sounds nice, Rizu smiles. That's actually pretty smart. Jian can't help but smile at the compliment. Later that night, as the fire dies down, the steer surfaces. How can Jian forget about their agreement and sleep peacefully like that? It thinks. It was able to escape death thanks to the girl, it muses zealously. But as long as she's alive, Jian is just a mere human. And will never truly work with him. Steer springs up into action. He'll be fine. He'll do everything on his own. Its main body may be inside the girl. But it has infected humans across the entire world. Its eye glares red. It's time to start a war and watch as they destroy each other. Then comes a defiant. No. Rizu flinches, rattled by some clash of wills or intent. She slides her hand across the infected eye. Stop acting out, she mutters, covering it up. Steer's in shock at being overpowered. You parasite, Rizu curses. Steer can't believe it. Her body is starting to adjust to its cells. I need to control it. It realizes. A bead of sweat drips from her chin, as Parasite tries to gain control over Host. You can if you want, she taunts. But Jian will deal with you. Her words hit it like a freight train. Not what you want, huh? She mocks, probing for weakness in its response. Just stay like this, helpless and pathetic, Rizu advises. Meanwhile, back at some high-tech base, satellites and signals are buzzing. It's intense, people clicking away at keyboards, the room buzzing with urgency. Have you found them yet? One guy asks, tension hanging in the air. But still, no dice. This whole situation is giving him a headache, and it's not getting any easier. Keep looking, the boss orders. Yeah, easier said than done in this chaotic mess. But there's something off about one of them. The dude's eyes flash red, eerie and unsettling. Meanwhile, Their island paradise shines bright under the sun. Riza lies in a hammock, her mind at work. Now that I've settled the satellites, they won't be a problem anymore. She knows the steer's power. It's intimidating. Her mind feels like it's connected to everything, to the whole wide world. With these powers, it should be possible. She's hatching a plan. I can make it so that Jane doesn't kill anyone, and no one will kill Jian. She thinks, staring intently at him as he prepares their meal on the shore. She'll protect him, no matter what. In another part of the peninsula, night falls over a bleak mountain scene. Yodiak Camp looms eerie in its emptiness. There, a soldier lies in silence, his life snuffed out without even a scream. Who is he again? Someone asks. She's Kuoksha, a 17-year-old girl. But she was a trained spy. She's fierce and determined. As she darts through the village outskirts, there's activity in the fields as an older man tries to harvest some crops in this arid land. Sir, it's me. A voice calls out, her tone hushed and urgent. It's Oksha, catching him by surprise. Back at the facility, the general asks, why did she break out? Oksha's answer is simple, my mother. She wants to know where her mother was buried. But there's no grave marker here, just a river where her mother's ashes were scattered. Not even a grave? Oksha asks. The old farmer tells her it was her mother's wish to have her ashes scattered in the Ipsiak River. Quietly, Oksha asks if her mother suffered, but the man reassures her she passed peacefully. Standing by the water's edge, Oksha murmurs her thanks. You should turn yourself in, he advises. I took out 3 guards on the way here, she admits. If caught, she'll be slaughtered. The man's weary sigh says it all as he hopes for her safety. Got a place to go? He asks. Oksha knows she needs someplace off the radar. South seems risky, but good. Oksha muses that she wouldn't just be an ordinary escapee, but one with a murder record. If I get caught, it's over, she acknowledges, thoughts racing under the night sky. For now, she needs a temporary hideout, a spot nobody will find her. Sometime later, Oksha gasps for breath. She just swam the distance to this deserted island, but realizes she's not alone. Rizu and Jian notice her in the distance. Is that a little kid? As the kid rises from the water, you can almost see the determination rise with them. Their soaked clothes cling as a reminder of the struggle they just endured. And suddenly, the mood shifts. I have to kill them, she declares while whipping out a knife. I'm sorry, she whispers, as she strides forward, casting a dark silhouette against the flickering flames. Back at the gloomy facility, there's chatter about someone being in Unit 649 for 3 years already, and who's only 17 years old now. Wait, how's that possible? Military rules say you have to be 17 to enlist, so how did she manage it? Apparently, the kid hid her real age, and the major just let it slide. Why the heck did they turn a blind eye? Well, apparently she was a monster. Meanwhile, on the island, the atmosphere turns charged. Rizu and Jian sit by a fire, completely unaware of the approaching danger. A shadow lurks from the water, eyes piercing the darkness. The night sky is clear, but the tension? Palpable. Suddenly, a knife gleams in a hand, ready to strike. The intruder charges the pair, knife drawn. Riza blurts out in panic. Hey! How'd you get here? As she and Jian spring to their feet. The attacker lunges forward with terrifying speed. As the knife swings brutally close, Jian swoops in last minute and pulls her away. The attacker locks eyes with them, her resolve as sharp as her blade. The intruder backs off a few steps. Caught off guard, Riza shouts. What's wrong with you? The assailant mutters something about wanting this to be quick, like it's some casual task. The attacker, no longer hesitating, bolts forward. Jian's eyes narrow, something clicks in his mind. Stand back, he says simply. Riza tries to prevent any rash actions, but it's too late. The attacker cries out, claiming they have no choice. But Jian takes her down with a swift, effortless move. She was talking to me, he informs the assailant coolly, as he stands unharmed, her attacks missing entirely. She slashes at his arm and aims a swift kick to the gut, breaking free from his grasp. The attacker, looking confused and desperate, reels back. She was sure she had sliced him. Rizu takes the lead, trying to reason with her. Wait, you're misunderstanding something, she says as she steps forward. But the attacker isn't convinced, labeling them spies from the south. Frustration builds as Riza face bombs at the absurd accusation. In a flash, the attacker revitalizes her efforts, deeming apologies unnecessary. When the attacker once again moves in aggression, Jian reaches out to stop her. But she quickly dodges, aiming for her real target. Don't move! She screams. The attacker is holding Riza hostage with a knife to her throat. Jian doesn't even flinch. In a quiet voice, he asks Rizu if he should still hold back after all the chaos the attacker has caused. He unleashes his power, eyes glowing with anger. The girl is shocked. Suddenly, Rizu scratches the girl's arm, drawing blood. The girl curses. But it's too late now, her blood's been infected. Her hand twitches, she loses control, and slumps to the ground. Jin's surprised at Rizu's bold move. The attacker, eyes wide in pure shock, can't move. Despite her previous bravado, she's being shut down by an immobilizing force. Horror fills her eyes as reality sinks in. Rizu's expression shifts to one of understated dominance. "You called me AB? You're just a kid," she scolds. Then, unexpectedly, "Call me older sister," she states with a casual finality. The attacker's eyes widen in sheer disbelief, wits completely scrambled. It's a peaceful scene, yet yelling can be heard from this deserted island. "She's still just a kid," she yells, confronting Jian. "Were you really gonna kill her?" Jian just stands there, expressionless, like he's pondering what's for dinner. Jian, unfazed, retorts, "She's old enough. She tried killing you first, remember?" Rizu is not buying it. "Even then, you went way too far," she shoots back. The attacker, still rattled, stares at them in disbelief. "Who are you people?" she blurts out. Rizu and Jian exchange a wordless glance. It's the kind of awkward silence you'd find at an office party. The trees around whisper under the cloak of night, adding to the tension. Rizu sighs, breaking the silence. "This is awkward," Rizu asks Jian, considering letting the newcomer join them. Jian's face hardens. "No. I want it to be just the two of us," he says, like this is some kind of romantic island getaway. "What should we do then?" Rizu ponders. The girl on the ground, caught in her emotions, defiantly speaks up. "I'd rather die than beg to you southern scum," she declares. Rizu and Jian maintain their cool despite the drama unfolding. Jian shrugs. "I'm fine with that," he says, almost like it's a weather report. Rizu, visibly annoyed, tells him to shut up. Suddenly, Rizu's eyes light up with that eerie glow again. The same power that immobilized their would-be attacker earlier. It's as if her very gaze is a weapon. "It's convenient," Rizu muses silently. Her demeanor softens, and she lets out a breath. "Really?" she asks, amused. "Should we really kill you?" Rizu steps closer to the girl. "I'm sure you got a good look at my ability," she says. She raises her finger and tells the girl that she can kill her with a finger dip, if death was what she really wanted. The girl gulps, reeling in fear. After the count of 3, Rizu begins. But before she gets any further, the girl breaks. "Let me live! I'll do whatever you say," she pleads desperately. A silent contemplation ensues between Rizu and the girl. Then, surprisingly, a smile tugs at Rizu's lips. Acknowledging the girl's submission, Rizu affectionately pats her head. "Good girl," she says, in a tone reserved for pets and children. Jibin looks unamused as their little duo becomes a trio. Meanwhile, in the North Korean facility, trouble is brewing. Looks like the security department is sniffing around the case of the girl. But how did they know about her? It's all tied to some mission she was given before she was sent to prison. "You mean that girl isn't some ordinary kid?" he mutters, thinking deeply. Back on the island, the trio share stories by the fire. Our attacker, now a reluctant companion, holds a small meal. And so, her tale unfolds. Military life since childhood, imprisonment due to a mistake, and after hearing news that her mom was ill, she decided to escape, but her mom already passed away. And after wandering aimlessly, the girl just happened to end up on their island. Rizu asks what mistake the girl made. The girl is reluctant, so Rizu asks again. She pauses briefly. She was supposed to escort a Chinese researcher who had found out something, and she had leaked that classified information. Rizu and Jian lean closer, intrigued. The girl starts reciting a string of years, beginning from 946 AD. She goes on until 1903, and finally 1925. "What is all this?" Jian wonders, skeptical. "Eruption years," Rizu concludes. Up until now, these explosions were pretty minor. But this year, the girl declares that Baekdu Mountain will erupt in a major explosion. Rizu's and Jian's gazes are fixed, processing this heavy revelation. As the fire crackles, warmth blends with the growing tension that fills the air. In a satellite lab way over somewhere, Nerdy Guy exclaims. "I found them!" He's zeroed in on our island trio's location. "It's off Tongchan Port," he announces. He's certain that he's found Jian and Rizu. "Wait! Tongchan Port!" His colleague blurts out, his face a mix of disbelief and realization. He confirms, albeit reluctantly. "Yes." The revelation hits like a tidal wave. They're in North Korea. A grainy video plays of Jian standing amidst chaos. There's bodies scattered on the rooftop, smoke rising ominously in the background. The next scene shows Giant's power is on full display, cutting through soldiers as if they're nothing. He stands victorious, a lone figure against a fiery backdrop, glowing eyes signaling his dominance. All this was being watched by an old general. He watches the scene unfold on screen, disbelief etched into his expression. He turns to a computer screen beside him. President Kong is on video call. "What should I call you?" the old man asks. Well, currently she is the acting president. The general decides to call her general, just to piss her off. And it looks like it might be working. The discussion shifts gears abruptly, questioning the video's authenticity. Skepticism fills the room. "Why would I be lying?" the president demands. "Why wouldn't you?" counters the old general. He breaks it down for her. She gained her position through a coup d'etat, and she could very likely be creating a distraction to protect that position. The acting president warns the general to tread carefully, but his silence only fuels the tension. He switches gears, reconfirming that the monster in the video and the cause of the global disease are both in North Korea right now. "And you were the ones that sent them over?" he asks. An argument ensues. They weren't sent over. They ran away. "And what about the conditions?" the general asks. "Yeah, that's right. If everything is true, shouldn't she offer a reward for their efforts? And if they were gonna deal with a monster like that, isn't a reward expected?" The acting president grimaces and begins to offer suggestions. "Who do you think you are?" The old general raises his voice, slamming his cane on the floor. As tension heightens, the general mocks the idea of allowing foreign troops to enter, equating it to a war declaration. He suggests that she think of a suitable reward and he'll contact her soon. The president's face is a mix of frustration and determination, aware of the stakes. She tries to say something more, but she's disconnected. With the connection broken, the old general lets out a sigh of disbelief. But his subordinate reasons with him. What if it were true? The old general calls BS and calls it special effects. They're just trying to divert things away from their coup. He orders them to send Unit 649, that should be more than enough to deal with them. He mentions the explosion at Mount Baker being caused by this monster. What a perfect story. Perfect enough to release to the media. Meanwhile, back on the island, the girl asks Rizu and Giant if they believe her. Rizu knows she's telling the truth because of the steer inside her. Rizu offers her a way out. She'll help the girl make her way to the south. Too risky. If she gets caught, she'll be executed. Silence hangs over them. The girl speaks. Her mother used to tell her to do whatever she needed to do to live, and to survive until the end. This sparks a memory in Giant, of his mother telling him the same thing before she died. The girl breaks down in tears, regretful that she wasn't able to be by her mother's side when she died. The last thing she can do now is keep that promise. In a moment of understanding, Riza clasps her hand. As they sit together, emotions spill out. The girl's tears fall freely, and Riza stands stoic but sympathetic. Giant stands at a distance from them. Suddenly, something catches his attention. He looks up, sensing something amiss. He strides towards the water and dips his hand. The other two wonder what's going on. Giant activates his senses. "Something's coming," he announces. Realization strikes hard as Giant calculates the incoming threat. 48 individuals are closing in. The girl starts to panic. They're here for her. If they stay on this island, they won't stand a chance against them. In frustration, she shouts at Riza to grasp the gravity of the threat. She's sure it's the Peacock platoon. As tension grips them, Giant calmly interrupts, asserting his control over the situation. Facing the setting sun, his promise echoes across the beach. "Your mother's promise. I'll help you keep it," solidifying his resolve to stand with them. Giant stands strong, but his ally tries to reason with him, acknowledging his power yet expressing doubt. Giant swiftly interrupts with a firm, "No, you don't understand." The girl thinks Giant's gone insane. Riza listens in silence, trying to gauge the situation. Giant declares that no matter who the enemy is, north, south, or anywhere else in the world, he's got it covered. He vows not to let anyone on the island die, reinforcing his determination. He turns slightly, and there's something in his eyes, a mix of defiance and empathy. His declaration is simple but powerful. "You will live." Fast forward a month, and the once nameless island is now known ominously as the Red Island. Gigantic vessels lie in ruins, evidence of the devastation. Because of the intense attention this place gathered, it soon got an English name, Blood Island. Dawn breaks over the ocean, a fleet of boats speeding toward the island, their engines roaring. Giant stands calmly on the shore, facing the water, while Riza and the girl, Okja, watch anxiously behind him. Giant calls Riza. Riza's eyes widen. "I know you don't like it, but I have no choice," he starts, the weight of his decision clear. His voice softens. What's most important to me is you and that girl's life. And if you two are in danger. He hesitates, the silence stretching between them. After a short pause, Jain's resolve is met with a silent nod from Rizu, a shared understanding in their eyes. Jain raises his hand, signaling the beginning of the battle. The scene shifts to the North Korean command. Inside, the old general sips his tea, humming. Suddenly, knocks on the door interrupt his tranquil moment. Come in, he says. The general is briefed on the Unit 649's failed mission, his stoic expression barely holding as he processes the failure. They proceed to the infirmary, where a shell-shocked soldier was. They ask him to repeat what he just said. So the monster in that video is real? He asks. The injured soldier is speechless. It's true. He finally manages. The general demands to know the details. It was when we almost arrived on the island, recounts a soldier. The island was directly in their sights. They saw that thing put his hand in the water. And with a flash of his eyes, chaos erupts. Waves crash violently, swallowing up soldiers as they scream in panic. Oksha watches, awe mixed with fear. How? She whispers, unsure whether to be amazed or terrified. She turns to Jain. What did you do? The answer is simple yet ominous. You can't tell? It's a vortex. Jain replies, setting everything in motion. The girl is astounded. Now they can no longer approach this place by boat, Jain declares. Back at HQ, the old general dispatches the Air Force. Make sure to rain fire, he commands grimly. Unknown to him, one of his men has already been infected. And Rizzy uses him to spy. They'll come through the sky, she predicts grimly. The sky buzzes with aircrafts approaching. It's an airstrike. Oksha panics, but the others unfazed. Get out, Jain orders, nudging her out of the way. With unwavering focus, Jain reaches into his own depths of power. The best eyes, ostrich, he murmurs, eyes sparking with supernatural clarity. He zooms in on the pilots' faces. Next, he uses the speed of the frigate bird to zoom in on the planes. All around, explosions create a fiery spectacle. Oksha can only stare in wonder. Meanwhile, back at the military command, brewing tensions spill over. The general's expression darkens, realizing the video was not fake. His subordinate suggests contacting the south. That's a definite no for the old general, but there's still the nuclear weapon option. Drones fill the sky above the little island. With hand raised, Jain calls on the power of the albatross wings. And with one big arm movement, he clears all the drones from the area. Jain, cool and composed as he surveys his handiwork. Meanwhile, Oksha and Riza have these deadpan expressions. Reports rush in. A sudden gust disrupted everything. Next, it's bombs. Rain ballistic missiles on them is the next command. Cut to Jain, now holding this gigantic rock. What's he planning to do with that? With a swift movement, he hurls the rock with immense force. The rock slams into its target, and the explosion's massive, taking it all out. It's not just equipment, it looks like the whole landscape's rearranged. Back on the military front, it's facepalm time for the general. Everything's failed. He reflects that he must really be getting old, if he can handle those two. As he carefully lifts his hat, there's a sense that he's making a major decision. Then we see him readying himself, like he's preparing to meet someone important, or maybe face his fate. He stares at the portraits of the great leaders, and he declares he must meet him. The soldier is utterly stunned. In order to catch that monster, the general says, they need the power of the People's Republic of China. Towering statues bask in sunlight, their presence dominating the skyline. In the midst of the group, a man appears deep in thought, distractedly slapping at a mosquito that lands on his neck. Smack! The mosquito is a goner, leaving a tiny splatter on his palm. Elsewhere, Riz's eyes flicker with concentration. Although I can sense that I'm within their body, she muses, her powers operate with limits, becoming weaker with distance. Frustration tightens in her posture. Humans are shameless. Steer surfaces suddenly. If you want more power, you have to give something up in return, it declares. She's not sure what Steer was getting at. If this continues, more people will die because of him. It tries to convince her. Rizu watches Jain as he prepares his assault. They'll die to protect you, Steer goes on. Rizu, once more, weighs painful decisions. But there's a way to prevent needless deaths. She has to surrender control to it. Chaos erupts, aerial assaults send missiles screaming toward their destination. The pilot's intent is clear, destruction. Jvin and his crew brace themselves as lethal shadow swoops down. Jain needs to make a decision fast. He grabs Ogja and Rizu, narrowly avoiding the blast, feeling the heat at their backs. Amidst the turmoil, Jain reflects, pressing thought against reality. This is a problem. He can't fight and protect them at the same time. He exhales, centering himself slowly. He's almost reaching his limit. Elsewhere, the Chinese flag waves against turbulent skies over a formidable building. Inside, discussions turn grim. Scenes of chaos flash across a screen. His assistant reports that all of this is true. It's a bloodbath, he declares. The image of an island fills the screen, nameless and abandoned. The intrigue deepens, while skepticism laces the leader's voice. I still can't believe this. An idea brews, why don't they make things bigger? We'll leak this video to the world. The figure decides, triggering global alarm. Framing Giant as a monstrous threat, poised to bring destruction to the world. And the narrative slips into a new role for a power willing to step in, China. Back to the beach, destruction looms. The group struggles, panting in exhaustion, proving they're still in the fight. There's no end. Giant thinks, an ominous truth settling in. Giant realizes that he can't do it alone. Giant closes his eyes, thinking. Humans are able to conquer the world as the apex predator because they use tools. They've mastered language, shaping thoughts and narratives to their will. And they were also born evil. And the number one reason why humans were at the top was because those around them showed no hostility. With determination, Giant resolves to show them what happens when nature decides to show hostility. Giant's eyes, they're almost glowing with resolve to handle whatever's barreling his way. In the background, Steer's trying to worm his way in. If Riza doesn't act, many more will be killed in order to protect her. Back to Giant, he seems to be mumbling something. Who wants to join me? He asks, with a thumbs up. Energy ripples around him. His tired companions suddenly look up. Shadows of birds start circling above. Underwater, fish start arriving by the hundreds. And then, sharks break through the water. Giant's eye, it's like a beacon now, fired up and burning bright. Giant rallies the group. Everyone, join me! It's now or never, no time to think, only to act. Birds swoop, countless and fierce. It's like nature herself answered his call. In a memory, we see a bunch of kids playing around a quiet village, their carefree laughter filling the air. Giant's young face is a mix of boredom and curiosity. He watches the others with those sharp blue eyes, not quite part of the fun. A gentle hand ruffles his hair, snapping him out of his daze. What are you doing sitting here? Asks a familiar voice, full of warmth. Why aren't you playing with your friends? His mom teases, gesturing toward the chaos happening in the center of the courtyard. The kids are having a blast. She tries again, nudging him to join. It looks fun. Don't you want to play with them? She asks, trying to coax him into action. A long pause follows. Giant just looks away, not saying a word. She gets him, even if he won't say much. Give me your hand, she insists, a plan forming in her mind. Her hand clasps his in a playful thumb war gesture. It's a challenge, a silent promise of sorts. All right, who wants to play with me? She calls out to the group. Giant's eyes widen just a bit, curiosity getting the better of his reserved nature. She waves their connected hands in the air, calling the group towards them with an infectious energy. Giant's act speaks volumes. He's in, at least for now. But then, the scene shifts dramatically. A fleet of ships and jets ripple across choppy waters, tension in the air as they head toward land. A military officer stares, disbelief etched on his face. Whatever's happening wasn't in the playbook. As jets roar and strategy unfolds, chaos erupts in the skies and seas. Birds scatter, caught in the mess above, while ships tremble in turbulent waters. A fighter pilot's scream pierces the noise, the situation spiraling out of control. Jets crash, the sky a collage of explosions and debris. Ships find themselves trapped in whirlpools, nature itself complicating their mission. Back on the shoreline stands Giant, watching it all unfold. Others, like Riza and Okja, join him. While the world falls apart, Giant stays calm. Maybe he's brave, or maybe he just zoned out again. Birds flee, dolphins dive deep, everything's reacting instinctively. It really was very simple. All he did was make them realize that they had a common enemy. And that was humans. His presence commands the skies and seas alike, something unerringly powerful brewing within him. At the seat of government in China, officials are sweating as global events surpass their understanding. The world watches, the spectacle broadcasted on every screen, panic spreading fast. Amidst this chaos, Okja stands grounded. A missile streaks through the sky, aiming directly toward their spot on the land. Giant steps up, hand raised to meet the incoming threat. You will live, he tells his companions, a promise of safety. A massive power surges from his being, calling forth all of nature. The very elements bend to his will, a blend of sky and sea erupting in concert. But suddenly, something makes him pause. You're still alive, he smiles. A pair of blue eyes peek out from the depths of the ocean. Giant questions why it was here and not in Northern Europe. He's unsettlingly calm while trying to grasp more. Eyes blazing, Giant signals for help, a silent call to those who understand the stakes. Ships and planes continue their advance, bathed in the glow of a setting sun, this intense saga leaving the world holding its breath. The tense scene kicks off with a commanding officer shouting, rallying all forces to aim their weapons. But suddenly, his expression shifts to shock and confusion. Something's definitely off. Cut to an impressive view, a fleet of ships racing across the ocean, their paths slicing through the water. But then, the waves rise unnaturally high, causing alarm. Meanwhile, the officers are drenched in sweat, looking like they just ran a marathon, except the finish line is nowhere in sight. Enter a colossal creature, its eyes glowing a fierce blue. It's something straight out of a nightmare, towering and intimidating. Back in the city, people gather in flocks, eyes glued to giant screens displaying the monstrous scene. Their faces mirror the chaos, a mixture of fear and astonishment. Giant stands apart, arms spread wide, practically daring the world itself. There's something almost serene about his stance, contrasting the frenzied backdrop. His eyes, those intense blue eyes, show a depth and power that leave you wondering what he's truly capable of. The monstrous entity seen earlier continues its destructive dance, water cascading off its massive form as it moves with dreadful grace. And just like that, explosions erupt. Bright, fiery blasts punctuate the chaos, fire meeting water in a wild, extravagant clash. The creature, surrounded by destruction, seems eerily in control. It's a spectacle of chaos, and somehow, Giant appears rooted to the spot, totally unfazed. Release it to the world! The figure commands with chilling confidence. In a flash, images flood the streets, making it seem like doomsday's here. A twisted spectacle on massive screens suggests chaos and an end of the world vibe. Guess who's claiming to be the hero? The People's Republic of China. Guess they missed the memo on sharing the spotlight. People crowd the streets, glued to this bizarre show, faces painted with confusion and fear. The end of the world. They murmur in disbelief. And there he is, Giant, with eyes that gleam like something out of a sci-fi flick. The monstrous face of destruction remains as terrifying as ever, like it's auditioning for the role of your worst nightmare. Cut to a bright sky, offering a moment of peace. In a bustling cafe, Dawoon spots something on her phone. Giant, she whispers, concern lacing her voice. Images of him, alongside others like Rizu, invade her thoughts. Now, to a grand building. The UN delivered a message. They're naming the mysterious island now. Would contacting the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure, and Transport be appropriate? The current situation might need their intervention. The atmosphere? Tense, to say the least. Red Island? They decide. A foreboding name, isn't it? That delegate leaves, looking like he's seen a ghost. A trickle of blood falls from his nose, a quiet signal of the toll the chaos is taking on him. They thought they had all the answers. But Giant, surrounded by faces like Riza and Dawoon, seems to defy expectations. The man concludes no one can rival the power the so-called monster wields. The horizon burns orange, and the waters around Red Island teem with wreckage. An unsettling calm hovers over devastation. Amidst it, Giant sits with unsettling tranquility. Nearby, Riz's eyes burn red as she observes the destruction. But wait, she's not just horrified. There's something about Giant's abilities, beyond her wildest dreams, and she can't control him. Interestingly, he seems uninterested in annihilating humans. She had plans, using another woman as leverage. But things have flipped, she's using Rizu instead. Rizu, eyes now glowing with malevolent power, seems to stand at the crux of this power struggle. Giant's lost in thoughts, staring into the sun setting over the ocean. Rizu ponders aloud the future of this chaos. Giant, on the other hand, remains a silhouette against the burning sky, a mystery. Rizu, rising with determination, finds this turn of events interesting. She's got plans for Giant, to keep an eye on him. Everything hangs on Giant's decisions. The world seems to breathe easier under the expanse of the sky. But tensions are rising elsewhere. Up close, Beekta Mountain is erupting, literally shaking everything to its core. In a distant command post, a flag flutters calmly. Panic strikes the room. General! It's an emergency! Giant's face looms large on the screen. Whoa, Giant's causing this much fuss? Must be bad, or rather nuclear. Did someone get assassinated? But no, Beekta Mountain is very much active. The further implications chill the room, breakthrough or disaster. Eyes widen in fright, really driving home the magnitude. As the day continues, life stirs under colossal statues. Slowly, the ground trembles beneath, startling passers-by. Looks like Mother Nature's about to throw a surprise party. Debris falls like brittle glass, people scream as reality breaks apart. The sun sets over the city as life moves on below. In a crowded subway station, everyone is glued to their phones, an ordinary day turning extraordinary without warning. A man is scanning through his phone, catching the latest updates and almost missing what's about to break. A vibrant, whimsical selfie grabs his attention momentarily, just before a piercing alert zaps through the screens, jolting everyone present. More alerts follow, a symphony of distress. The emergency message screams disaster. Baked Mountain has erupted with a ferocious 7.7 magnitude. The station turns a sea of heads buried in phones, mutters of disbelief filling the air. Outside, the scenes are grim. A foreboding atmosphere hangs thick as smoke and debris signal calamity. It's chaos. Fires and ash turning the dusk darker than night. High above, in a command post, tension simmers. They talk stats, volcanic explosivity index comparison, historical eruptions. 96 was bad and this is just as fierce. A hasty briefing follows. Earthquakes, tsunamis, North Korea's taken an awful hit. Damage costs? 5 trillion won and climbing. So, is that all? No, and volcanic ash is the bigger problem. Another replies, sweating the fine details. Maps flash locations, projecting casualties, grave tones fill the room. The ash was supposed to head to Japan. Now, changes in the wind, thanks to Lee Jian's unexpected powers, creating gusts that defy nature. Suddenly, it's all redirected, straight towards Seoul. Images of drones, chemical attacks invade thoughts. But Jian's powers have flipped the script, forcing winds to counter and confuse. Altered paths show fallout headed toward the heart of Korea. Panic is palpable. Seoul, the direct aim, lies vulnerable. Off in the island, Rizu finds herself by the ocean's edge, as if contemplating the abyss. She questions the reality around her. The glimmer of calmness as Jian affirms the attacks are over doesn't ease her. Yet, there's unease behind the cool facade as she considers, poised between relief and doubt. The imagery of the calamity is undeniable, panicked crowds, stunned faces. Her eyes, uniquely piercing, observe Okja while uncertainty continues to stir. The eruption is real, tragedies mounting. Flashbacks of destruction, the world on fire, flicker through her mind. It's what nightmares are made of. And then, the urgency returns. "We need to evacuate!" she shouts, tension breaking the night. His eyes, usually full of mystery, are now set with a clear decision. Another eruption from the mountain will send ash their way. Jian is aware it's not the case. The ash is heading for Seoul, and Rizu is paying attention. There's trust in his calm assurance. A soft, comforting image flashes by, Dawoon, a serene face that hides resilience. Suddenly, to the vast sea ahead, Jian embarks alone, a haunting figure in motion. He steps into the water, unflinching. Words echo, a friendship's echo past the time and chaos. Something grand is about to rise from the depths. It's monumental, the bond they share immutable through timeless tides. The emergence of a companion bears an unsaid promise. This massive creature, all tentacles and glowing eyes, lurks in the waves. The sea is relentless, and not everyone is meant to navigate its depths. There's a surreal calm, even with this giant being practically breathing down his neck. His expression is somber, hinting at some inner conflict or acceptance of fate. Cut to the beach, where Rizu watches the whole scene unfold. She's anxious and torn. Saving a friend comes first, no matter the cost. Jian stands, unwavering, facing this ocean leviathan with an odd sense of calm. For Jian, there's only one objective, bringing a friend to safety. As they stand before a massive leviathan, the moonlit night casts a dramatic shadow over the tense moment. Riz's eyes, deep in thought, express worry and calculation as she watches the exchange. But there's tension. This time it's different. Something's off. Jian reaches out, defying nature itself. His goal? To communicate, to connect, as a human. The ocean's surface ripples, echoing with potential. The vastness of the creature before him underscores the challenge at hand. Suddenly, Gu Oksha is woken up by an exhausted but relieved voice. Momentarily breathless, she acknowledges the attack. Despite the chaotic scene, he reassures. It's over. The urgency in Jian's voice is clear, the next stop is Seoul. Surprising? Yes, but Jian stays focused. Baked Mountain's eruption is more than nature, it's a call to action. Time to save a friend. Okja isn't sold on it, but the unspoken trust is evident. Anything seems possible for someone like him. Getting to Seoul isn't just about travel, it's about determination. Something magical brews as a surge of energy manifests around Jian. The scene vibrates with raw potential as his eyes glow an otherworldly shade of blue, like he's one step away from getting a promotion to the cosmos. The ocean reflects Jian's determination. Even as Gu Oksha asks what he's doing, there's a silent understanding. He reaches out, looking like a dramatic movie hero, minus the slow motion and background music. But then a glitch. Jian's power falters. Panic? Confusion? Both flicker through his eyes as it dawns on him. My power, it's disappearing. Rizu is just as lost, with the faltering power likely linked to Giant overexerting himself. But before answers surface, Rizu is struck by an intense, painful sensation. Jen's concern breaks through. Something's wrong with Rizu. Her cries pierce the night, escalating the sense of danger. Rizu struggles, her plea to Giant to run hangs heavy in the air. Out of nowhere, her once calm gaze shifts dramatically. But Giant's resolve solidifies against the incoming blow from Gu Okja. Tension tightens. It's not just a physical battle but a struggle of wills. Rizu's mysterious power taunts Giant. His very existence is questioned. Her chilling words echo through the scene. As punishment, he's demoted, becoming one of the judged. The implication is severe, her eyes cold and crimson with fierce energy. Giant braces for the full force of Okja's challenge. Intensity builds with Giant's eyes flashing electric blue, a dense energy storm swirling around him. With impeccable control and a focused stance, he deflects Okja's amplified assault. Things get intense as Gu Okja comes at him full force, and Giant retreats, looking like he's trying to avoid getting hit by a speeding train. The battle resonates with the beach's roar, leaving him momentarily stunned. He's gasping for air on the sandy ground, while Rizu heaps disappointment on him, saying they can't trust him anymore. Okja and Rizu are now creepy figures with glowing red eyes. Rizu's acting like he's some weakling. In Giant's mind, thoughts swirl. He knows he's got a problem on his hands. But Rizu's voice rings out, saying there's no point in him even being alive. Ouch. Just trash. She calls him. Things get serious when her glowing eyes move with deadly focus. The massive creature looms over the scene. This leviathan, looking like something straight out of a nightmare, stirs with a menacing presence. Its tentacles slowly curls, ready to strike. The girls admit they've rushed things, calling the situation unfortunate. Rizu hints they might die like this. It's getting real. Giant can't take it anymore. He screams for everything to stop, practically tearing his throat out. The leviathan pauses, its immense size silhouetted by the moonlight, maybe listening to Giant's plea. Giant's stare meets Rizu's eyes. Is this what regret is? She wonders aloud, feeling both saved and condemned. They even find something oddly positive in the mess they're in. Giant stands firm. He tries to instill resolve. This battle, this stand, it's more than just surviving. Giant must witness humanity's fate. Rizu's words reflect defiance, showing she's not about to back down. Giant's face hardens. The resolve to push through is fierce. She's ready to drive this fight all the way. Rizu talks about the ultimate end, extinction. Her words chill the air, leaving echoes that spell doom. The scene opens with a calm sky, bathed in early light, setting a peaceful backdrop. Gu Okja is caught by surprise, eyes wide, sensing something amiss. She glances down at her hand. What? She blurts out, bewildered, as Giant stands nearby, equally stunned, looking out into the odd dawn that greets them. Okja mutters, "Where's Uni?" Scanning the empty beach where only waves keep them company. Giant simply says she left. He holds up his hand, staring at it in puzzlement, while his mind spins. A sense of defeat seeps in. "It's because you're losing," echoes through his head, heavy with ominous truth. Giant's back is to Okja as he reflects on existence and judgment, feeling the weight of human fate on his shoulders. "Nothing's changed," he insists silently, his expression hardening with bitter resolve. His disdain for humanity flickers briefly, battling against fleeting memories. Images of those important to him flash by, friends, strangers, more than just passing faces. Their smiles and warmth seep into him even as he tells himself he still harbors hate. His contemplation breaks with a silent pause, air filled with uncertainty. The sunlight pierces through, banishing dark thoughts with a moment's clarity. They pause as they steady themselves. A body emerges from the surf, unfamiliar and foreboding. It sets off alarms in his mind. Giant gasps in horror, reeling back, confronting the reality now laid bare. Visceral reaction takes over. He vomits in reaction to the gruesome sight. Okja stands unaffected, unreadable. Beneath the panting breaths, Giant collects himself, heartbeat thudding in his ears as sweat mixes with the rising tide. Overhead, a mechanical whirring catches his attention. "If we get attacked now..." Giant's dread resurfaces, as the drone looms hauntingly, marking them. "Hide!" he yells, urgency tinging his voice as he fears the worst. Okja remains calm, almost dismissive, explaining it's just a surveillance drone. "It's here to watch us. It won't attack," she assures him with a quiet confidence while Giant struggles for control. Yet, Rizu's words carry an undercurrent of haunting intent, suggesting how humanity's future hangs in the balance. Giant mulls over the stark possibilities. His outlook has shifted, realizing just how much has changed. Nature around him rustles with a remembered threat, the kind that comes from all directions as he stands alone in an indifferent world. The image of a rabbit flashes as Jaehyun's mind locks onto a single word: pray. Jaehyun shivers, feeling all too vulnerable, snapping back to Okja's words with a nervous glance. "Can you not hear me?" she snaps, pulling him out of his reverie. She presses him. "What's our next move?" demanding clarity in the chaos. Jaehyun hesitates. Options are dwindling, and he's unsure of forward action. "What can I do?" Jaehyun asks, voice falling into a whisper tinged with desperation. Okja notes his fatigue, her mind silently condemning his weakening resolve. He stands there, head low, concern gnawing at him, with a sense of failure looming large. Okja glances skywards as the drone maintains its steady watch, ominously tracking their every move. Rest is only a brief reprieve, danger lurks just beyond. It's an unspoken truth between them, sticking together invites more peril. Okja remains crisp in her demeanor, already assessing what needs to be done. She must leave him. Her quiet conclusion, "It's fine," carries the weight of cold calculation. A promise echoes, tethering actions to past commitments, binding to legacies burdened with expectation. Final resolve shapes her next steps as silence lingers, accompanied by the relentless tension. Suddenly, Jaehyun is caught in the whirlwind of Okja's emotions. She grabs him, snapping him back to reality with a forceful reminder to focus. Okja's frustration is palpable, as she shouts, "You!" demanding accountability from him. There's a lingering promise about saving a friend. The intensity of his gaze shows he understands the gravity of her words. Okja doesn't let up, questioning if he's really going to stand by, powerless. Her eyes are fierce as she declares her own will to live and pushes him to take action too. She challenges him to remember his promise to find Uni. A memory stirs, a promise that seemed unshakable. Jaehyun's lips tighten, grappling with inadequacy and hesitation. Okja taunts him, asking if he's really giving up just because he's tired. Mid-rant, something distracts her, causing her to pause and curiously glance up. It's bird poop, of all things, and it lands right on her head. She just stands there, silently wondering if this is some kind of cosmic joke. The confusion becomes short-lived as they notice the winged shadows forming above. Both look up, observing the surreal sight of birds framing the sky. Suddenly, a wave of resolve hits Jaehyun. He hasn't lost everything, he thinks. Even if it feels like everything's slipping, there's still a fight left in him. Her stern face softens slightly as she accepts his change in attitude. "Yes," he finally says, determination emerging amidst exhaustion. He promises he'll protect and do what he must to save a friend. The massive, swirling formations of the creature and the birds create a stunning scene, almost surreal in its beauty and menace combined. And so, gazing at this grand, chaotic tapestry, Jaehyun makes his decision. "Let's get her back," he states, eyes bright with conviction. Chaos erupts as Baekdu Mountain spews fire into the sky, ash raining down like confetti from hell. And 500 kilometers away, in Seoul, the damage is immense. The skyline's buried under volcanic debris. The whole country's blanketed in ash, warnings blaring across the airwaves. "Stay indoors," they say. "Please wear gas masks if possible." Dawon stares out the window, her eyes full of worry. Is this the end? The sky's so dark, it feels like midnight. Not everyone's cowering though. In the city, crowds gather, angry and frustrated, fists raised in protest despite the suffocating air. Someone stares at the screen in disbelief. Is this really happening? Inside a room, tension brews. "Don't take it personally," an aide tells the acting president. "Nobody could have prevented a natural disaster." But the topic circles back to Lee Jaehyun. Is he still battling on Red Island? Doors swing open suddenly. "No," a woman's voice interrupts. "Looks like Jaehyun's heading this way." The president's eyes widen in surprise as Rizu strides in. "It won't matter though," she says with a dismissive shrug. Recognition flickers in the room. It's Rizu, but both eyes are now glowing red, completely taken over by Steer. Stepping with purpose, Steer settles itself in the president's armchair with deadly calm. "I'm thinking about starting with this country," it muses. "You," it says, looking directly at President Kim. Steer's got grand plans. "Be my puppet," they command, eyes glittering with unsettling power. A while later, the UN General Assembly is called to session. The eruption of Baekdu Mountain, Red Island, and Lee Jaehyun. The UN is buzzing with plans to invade the north and reunify the Korean peninsula, stirring decades-long tensions. And with this news, China sends a stark warning. China will join the war if there is any form of attack against North Korea. The world's on edge. Inside the assembly, there's confusion and concern. What's happening with Korea? Whispered speculation that the entire Korean government has been taken over by Steer. It's possible. They agree. Even amongst themselves, there could be infected ones. One official speaks up. They have no choice but to use force. But another reminds him of what happened on Red Island. Korea has that monster, Lee Jae-in. They wonder if the Red Island event was part of Korea's plan. It's not so unthinkable anymore. Despite the tension, order is called for quiet. They'll vote on their course of action, the stakes sky high. Among the 197 member nations of the UN, 180 nations voted. Seems like it's decided, the UN head announces. If Korea crosses the line and starts a war, the UN will use their military power to stop Korea. The head's eyes glow red. It's Steer pulling the strings in this assembly now. Outside, the ash settles slowly over a city in turmoil. Rumors are spreading like wildfire. South Korea's borders are being heavily militarized. People start wondering. Are they after us? Yeah. Someone agrees, confirming the fear. In the streets, chaos swells. Protesters, masked and angry, are out in full force. The moment South Korea bothers the North, they will be everyone's target. Even though folks know Kim Se-young's a bit unhinged, attacking the North in this situation makes no sense at all. Unless, of course, you're infected by Steer. Attack! Declares the acting president. Meanwhile, back at the UN, the head murmurs. This is it. Just as planned. Target Korea! Is his chilling order. As the sun dips, signaling trouble, missiles streak through the sky, making a fiery descent. They smash into Seoul, igniting a chain of explosions. It's total mayhem. Steer watches the destruction unfold, illuminated by the glow of chaos outside. The sight's both horrifying and captivating. It's laughing, reveling in the madness, loving every second of it. Laughter bursts from it, tearing through the din of destruction. Its eyes flicker ominously red, as it stares at Riz's face in the mirror. For a moment, it pauses, the laughter dying down, leaving an unsettling silence. It stares at itself more closely. Interesting. It muses. Now what's up with that? Outside, snow like ash rains down on a city soaked in apocalyptic gloom. Meanwhile, someone stumbles into a bathroom, visibly shaken, and retches violently. It's President Kim. Steer walks in with a sinister smile, holding a book. With what remains of your life? It reads out. Protect the world against the monster, Lee Jae-in, and our Riz. It looks at Kim with a smirk. Its voice grows louder, almost musical, as it urges President Kim to feel the tremors of explosions, to understand the vibrations, and embrace the shadow of death. Too bad President Kim couldn't feel it. Maybe it was too much to ask for a sick human. The whole world thinks Kim is a tyrant for causing global war. But it assures her with chilling nonchalance that she'll forget everything. Steer pledges with a malevolent grin that the entire world will fall under its watch. Smoke continues to spew across the city's silhouette, remnants of its devastation scattered everywhere. Amidst the wreckage, a child cries, embodying the raw, unchecked grief left behind. Elsewhere, broadcast messages continue, urging evacuation. Confusion and despair growl in tandem as Daewon reflects on this living nightmare. She holds on to Royce for comfort as she grapples with the unreality of it all. She wonders if this continues any longer, will she die? Suddenly, the screeching of tires jolts her attention to an approaching car. It's parked in front of the cafe, and Daewon wonders who it could be. This is supposed to be the next bombing site, and it's too late for evacuation. Oh, she exclaims. Royce looks up in surprise too, at the sound of flapping of wings. Why are there birds here? Daewon's eyes widen. Among the birds, a figure soars closer to her. It's Jae-in. Ja, she breaths, recognizing something familiar in this visitor. A voice breaks through. There you are. Unmistakably resonant. Startling, she gazes upward as the giant bird releases him. She watches in amazement as Jae-in glides in through the window, breaking the glass. The dog in her arms squirms, sensing a friend. Jae-in clumsily rolls over. Not quite the graceful entrance he expected. Confusion mounts. What just happened? The dog darts out off to greet his friend. Oh, Royce. Jae-in mutters a greeting. Daewon calls out Jae-in's name in surprise. Hey, comes the reply, echoing its simplicity. How are you here? She gasps. The sound of a revving engine catches her attention. Inside the car, Oksha waits, shrouded in her own purpose. Let's go, Lee Jae-in declares, the certainty unwavering. I'm here to save you, he assures, the words carrying weight fit to tip the balance of the world. Your likes help Benza make more juicy content. Go on and hit that bell icon. Peace, and I'm out.